Chapter 987. Yes, you're right. Teacher Li hurriedly smiled. That's why we're going to let them retake the exam and see who's the one with the wrong results. Mo Yanjin laughed and asked, why should Qingning be implicated by other people's problems? Guo Qingning heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. She said softly, Grandpa, I already said that I won't rely on you for this. But you're the younger generation of the Mo family. You have to remember that with Grandpa around, no one can force you. After Old Master Mo finished speaking, Teacher Li hurriedly replied, Old Master Mo is right. We'll let the remaining 3 retake the exam. Yigaing came in first 4 times out of the 6 assessments this month. The only 2 times she came in second were only 1 or 2 points less than classmate Guo, said Director Han calmly. Guo Qingning's body stiffened. But this time, classmate Guo scored 30 to 40 points more than Yigaing, and the questions were more difficult. So I think it's better for them to retake the exam together. Director Han threw the report card on the table, intending to do business. Director Han, are you suspecting that there's something wrong with Qingning? Mo Yanjin narrowed his eyes, his tone sounding a little hostile. Everyone else in the special training department trembled in fear when they saw this scene. But soon, someone reminded Director Han of something. Guo Qingning was transferred to Class 1 by that person. Even if he didn't want to give anyone face, he couldn't afford to offend that person. Director Han's expression darkened. He pursed his lips and remained silent. Grandpa, Director Han didn't mean anything else. Guo Qingning smiled. She glanced at Pei Yunj casually as a sense of superiority rose in her heart. Maybe he was confused by student Pei's attitude. Classmate Pei? Mo Yanjin frowned. Teacher Li quickly smiled and said, Old Master Mo, it's Pei Yunj from Class 2. She's the only one who scored full marks in this assessment. Full marks? Mo Yanjin's tone carried a hint of mockery. Little girl, do you know that none of us from the older generation got full marks in the special training class back then? Pei Yunj glanced at him lazily, her eyes still unruly. She said slowly, it's quite shocking. Everyone present was speechless. Yigaing wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. However, among them, Mo Yanjin's expression was the ugliest. So young yet so arrogant. Mo Yanjin placed the teacup on the table and said in a deep voice, I don't want to argue with a junior. However, since someone dared to cheat here, they still had to bear the consequences. Dragging my Mo Yanjin's granddaughter into this, then shouldn't you at least apologize to my granddaughter? What do you think? Everyone knew what was going on. Mo Yanjin wanted to press her head down and confess to her crime so that Pei Yunj and Yu Yuehan would apologize to Guo Qingning. The main purpose of this was to embarrass Pei Yunj. Guo Qingning glanced at Pei Yunj and smiled. She couldn't help but feel proud. Sir, I don't think Pei Yunj cheated. Yigaing frowned. This student, do you think I'm wrong or do you think I'm not worthy of your respect? Mo Yanjin asked with a cold face. No one dared to offend Mo Yanjin. I'm doing this to teach some people a lesson. Mo Yanjin's eyes were filled with mockery. But then, suddenly, a voice rang out from outside the door with a sneer. I'd like to see who's the one worrying about my loved ones instead of worrying about their own coffin. End of chapter. Chapter 988. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone felt that this voice was familiar and subconsciously turned their heads to look. They didn't expect the person in front of them to be Zhong Shenglin. Zhong, its elder Zhong. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Although many people knew that Pei Yunj was from the Computing Institute, they didn't expect Zhong Shenglin to come in person. After all, Mo Yanjin was Guo Qingning's biological grandfather. However, they had never heard of Zhong Shenglin having a granddaughter. Before everyone could come back to their senses, they saw that there was someone beside Zhong Shenglin. It was actually Professor Yu Guang, the former director of the National Defense First Research Institute. Yu Guang desperately tugged at Zhong Shenglin's sleeve, reminding Zhong Shenglin to pay attention to his image. Unexpectedly, Zhong Shenglin turned to look at him. Yu Guang, if you pull my sleeve again, I'll make you pay for it. Yu Guang, the expression on Mo Yanjin's face froze. She didn't expect to see Zhong Shenglin and Yu Guang. Elder Zhong and Elder Yu are here? Mo Yanjin asked stiffly. Zhong Shenglin looked straight ahead as he brushed past Mo Yanjin and walked to Pei Yunj. Did someone bully you? As soon as Yu Guang walked over, Director Han bowed slightly to him. Director Yu. After all, he was also from the National Defense First Research Institute. What's going on? After Yu Guang finished asking, Teacher Li interrupted, someone stole the exam questions. When the exam results came out this time, only Pei Yunj got full marks. These words were just short of pointing at Bei Yunji's nose and accusing her of cheating. Yu Guang? He shouldn't have let Bei Yunji go through the proper procedures. When he was in the special training department he didn't get full marks either. Ask Lung to come here. If this matter isn't resolved properly, don't borrow people from me in the future. Zhong Xinglin's face darkened as he roared. Everyone was scared witless. They didn't expect Zhong Xinglin, who had always been good-tempered, to be so angry. Mo Yanjin felt embarrassed. Mr. Zhong, someone has identified Bei Yunji. Identify? Who identified him? From Zhong Xinglin's tone, it was obvious that he was here to settle scores. Dong Qing braced himself. Elder Zhong, it's me. Are you very close to Guer? Zhong Xinglin asked indifferently. No. Then why did she follow you to steal the answers? Dong Qing was at a loss for words. His stammering voice became softer and softer. Because I was the one who took the answers and was seen by classmate Pei. So, student Pei asked me for. Hearing this, Guo Qingning felt a little better, but a twisted jealousy flashed through her eyes. She did not expect that Zhong Xinglin would actually stand up for Bei Yunji. What everyone did not expect was that Zhong Xinglin would turn around and scold Director Han. Han Kemming, how dare you slander our Guer with such a lousy reason? Zhong Xinglin, Director, you knows about this matter. Is it possible for Bei Yunji to get full marks? Director Han frowned. He felt that Zhong Xinglin was being unreasonable. Yu Guang, it was still because he was too young. Suddenly, Bei Yunji said, let's reassess. Her gaze slowly swept across the people in the special training department. She sneered softly and said in a cold tone, I also hope that the district will give me an explanation after the reassessment. Suddenly Yu Guang felt a headache coming on. A person who had won the fairest prize was now being looked down upon? And the authenticity of a person who scored full marks in a small assessment was being questioned. Who wouldn't be angry if this happened to them? Moreover, Bei Yunji had a bad temper to begin with. Chapter 989. At this moment, Guo Qingning's expression was a little bad. However, Bei Yunji happened to look at her with a faint smile. Student Guo shouldn't have any special privileges. Can you not retake the exam? Guo Qingning, who was relying on Mo Yanjin's support. She could still be a little tougher. But now that Zhong Xinglin was here, how could Mo Yanjin be an exception? After Zhong Xinglin agreed to retake the exam, Mo Yanjin had no choice but to agree. The retake time was 1.5 hours. During this time old Master Lung also came. When Teacher Li saw that Guo Qingning was not in a good state, she knew that the cheating might have something to do with Guo Qingning. An idea quickly appeared in her mind. After hesitating for a moment, determination flashed across Teacher Li's eyes and she secretly walked out of the office. However, after more than 20 minutes, Bei Yunji finished the questions and submitted the answers. Even Chief Han was stunned by the speed at which he was moving. So fast? Had Bei Yunji already given up? Director Han pulled out the answers doubtfully and checked them carefully one by one. But a few minutes later, Director Han's expression kept changing. How was this possible? How could there be such a correct rate in 20 minutes? After Director Han finished checking the last question, his scalp went numb. Bei Yunji still got full marks. Instantly, the atmosphere in the special training area seemed to have frozen. There was actually someone who could get full marks. The remaining 3 had only finished a third of the questions. After hearing Director Han's words, they were about to collapse. What kind of monster was this? The youngest student in the special training class got a record-breaking full score in the exam? He Gaing's mouth twitched as well. Thinking of how arrogant she was to teach Bei Yunji questions, she suddenly wanted to slap herself. The results are out. Do you have anything else to say? Zhong Xinglin glanced at everyone expressionlessly. At this moment, Bei Yunji stood up and slowly tied her scarf. She took out the key from her pocket. Old Master Lung, I'll return this key to you first. Old Master Lung, who already knew the cause and effect of the matter, started to panic. Gura, keep the key. I don't live in the district anyway. Also, I will definitely seek justice for you. After that, Mo Yanjin's expression was already ugly enough. After everyone finished their assessment, only He Gaing's results were the most stable. As for Guo Qingning, she was an entire 40 points lower than He Gaing. Dong Qing was still at the bottom. Who was the one who cheated? The answer was obvious. And the final result was a slap to everyone's face. In the corridor, I think I heard someone calling for my Gu'er to apologize. At this moment, Zhong Xinglin started to hold a grudge. Mo Yanjin looked embarrassed. Elder Zhong, I didn't expect Qingning to do such a thing. But Qingning is still young after all, there's no need to hold on to this matter. However, He Gaiying, who was beside her, said faintly, "What young? Isn't Pei Yunj the youngest?" Elder Mo didn't have this attitude when he asked Yunj to apologize to Guo Qingning just now. "You?" Mo Yinjin's face darkened. Before Bei Yunj could say anything, her phone suddenly vibrated. She glanced at the message and quickly put her phone back into her pocket. She glanced at them. She said slowly, "I still have something on, so I'll leave the first district first. As for the rest, listen to our old master." With that said, Bei Yunj really left. Coincidentally, Chu saw Bei Yunj leaving quickly from afar. P.S. Master Pei, it's mainly because I have to fall in love. End of chapter. Chapter 990. Elder Chu frowned unconsciously and muttered to himself. Strange, didn't she ask me to go to the special training office? Why did she leave? Elder Chu hesitated for a while before heading to the special training office. At the same time, the atmosphere in the special training office was tense. What are you arguing about? Elder Chu pushed the door open and entered. Old Master Lung was stunned. Elder Chu, why are you here? Suddenly, Teacher Li said excitedly, Elder Chu, you're here. The moment she thought of Bei Yunj's attitude just now, the mockery in her eyes disappeared and she smiled respectfully. I was the one who called you just now. It's about student Guo. Teacher Li knew that Guo Qingning was able to enter class 1 because of Elder Chu. Now that Elder Chu was here, Zhong Xinglin and the rest had to consider Elder Chu's identity even if they wanted to cause trouble. Student Guo? Elder Chu frowned. Who is Student Guo? Instantly. Teacher Li's smile froze and she continued, weren't you the one who arranged for Guo Qingning to enter class 1 last time? Elder Chu immediately denied it. What nonsense are you talking about? As soon as he finished speaking, the people in the special training office were confused and could not help but look at Elder Chu. Wasn't it Elder Chu who opened the back door for Guo Qingning? This was not a secret in the special training office. Teacher Li was stunned. Elder Chu, but you were the one who personally made the call to arrange this. When did I arrange for Guo Qingning? Didn't I arrange for Bei Yunj? Elder Chu's tone was impatient. However, hearing this, everyone's bodies trembled. Bei Yunj? How did the person arranged by Elder Chu become Bei Yunj? The people in the special training office were stunned. Only then did Teacher Li recall with a pale face that on the day of reporting, other than Guo Qingning, Bei Yunj was also late. So, they had gotten the wrong person that day. Gradually, Guo Qingning's face was also pale and her entire body was trembling. Only then did she realize that the special treatment she received during this period of time belonged to Bei Yunj. Suddenly, everyone also heard He Gu Ying's cold and indifferent words. Aren't you working in the canteen? The teachers in the special training office. ? What was he talking about? Who would dare to arrange for the retired emperor to get food? He Gaiying. Director Han warned her not to spout nonsense. He Gaiying stared blankly and carefully probed. Did I make a mistake? But you said last time that you were Yunj's grandfather? Elder Chu coughed lightly when he sensed the gazes around him. I worked in the canteen for a few days. But later that little girl didn't eat in the canteen. At the mention of this, Elder Chu was infuriated. Old Master Lung, suddenly, he completely understood who gave Bei Yunj the canned beef in her hands. Arranged to enter class 1? My Gu-er has an A-rank pass. Why do you need to arrange it? Zhong Xinglin's tone was not very good, and the smell of gunpowder was getting stronger. At this moment, Yu Guang, who was at the side, had already noticed that this was a large-scale battle for favor. Is Bei Yunj one of your people? Elder Chu was stunned. But isn't she only in her 20s? Didn't the Institute of Computing only recruit graduate students and above? Besides, Bei Yunj looked like a bad student. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so thick-skinned as to open the back door for Bei Yunj. Zhong Xinglin glanced at him, his attitude still cold. I don't want to say anything else. But today, since my girl was almost made the scapegoat, the district must give me an explanation. Otherwise, whoever wants to sign the laboratory contract can sign it. Chapter 991. Scapegoat? Elder Chu turned to look at Director Han. What's going on? I asked you to take special care of her and this is how you take care of her? Director Han's face froze. Elder Chu's eyes were bright as he glanced at the others. His tone was a little cold. So, who was Bei Yunj taking the blame for just now? Instantly, Guo Qingning's face turned pale as she held Mo Yinjin's hand. Grandpa, Elder Chu, this is my granddaughter's fault, but can you do me a favor? Mo Yanjin gritted his teeth and immediately said, I have a student who just joined the 191st laboratory. If the district needs him, I can ask him immediately and arrange for him to come back to work. As soon as he finished speaking, even the teachers of the special training department were stunned. It was the 191st laboratory in Continent K? That was a place where only the elites of various countries were qualified to be selected. What's his name? Director Han could not help but ask. Hearing this, Mo Yanjin heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Luo Yan. Everyone had an impression of this person. It was said that he was also very talented. They did not expect him to enter the 191st laboratory. Luo Yan is Qingning's senior brother. The two of them have always had a good relationship. He will definitely be willing to help. Mo Yanjin smiled. He was also certain that the district would not give up Luo Yan, who had already entered the 191st laboratory for Bei Yunj. Framing and cheating in the assessment. I will get someone to make an announcement about this. In the future, these two people will also be banned from all work in the district. Unexpectedly, Elder Chu's attitude was still firm as he said coldly, also, Mo Yanjin, you should know that framing others in a national assessment like this can be held accountable. Instantly, Mo Yanjin's expression changed. He did not expect that even if he mentioned Luo Yan, Elder Chu would not give him face. Elder Chu, a talent like Luo Yan is exactly what our laboratory needs. Before Teacher Li could finish, Elder Chu's cold gaze shut her up. Grandpa, I don't want to go to jail, Guo Qingning trembled and said helplessly. On what basis? On what basis could they let her off so easily just because they thought that Bei Yunj cheated? In the end, it was her turn and she had to go to jail? Guo Qingning lowered her head, hiding the hatred in her eyes. Not long after, Director Han couldn't help but say, Elder Chu, actually Luo Yan is also on our invitation list. However, Luo Yan did not accept their invitation. After all, with Luo Yan's talent and potential, there were better choices. However, when Zhong Xinglin saw Director Han's attitude, he almost went berserk on the spot. Fortunately, Yu Guang quickly said, it's better to listen to Elder Chu on this matter, Director Han. Yes, listen to old Zhong. Old Master Ling nodded quickly. If they offended Zhong Xinglin, would they still be able to meet him in the district in the future? Director Han frowned. He didn't understand why Yu Guang didn't care about the big picture, but he couldn't change Elder Chu's decision now. When Zhong Xinglin saw that the attitude of the district was not bad, his expression turned slightly better. But facing Mo Yanjin and his grandson, he still sneered, Old Master Mo, we will pursue this matter to the end. If you don't want anything to happen to your granddaughter, I hope you can find some time to come to my humble home and apologize. Mo Yanjin's face was ashen, and she was so angry that her vision turned black. However, he had no choice but to leave with Guo Qingning. Zhong Xinglin, you'll get into trouble if you do this for a junior. Director Han frowned. Chapter 992. Trouble? Yu Guang was almost angered by his former student. He slammed the confidentiality agreement on the table. Look at yourself first. What trouble did you almost cause? Director Han was about to refute, but after seeing the big words on the agreement, he was stunned. Confidentiality agreement? Did he know something he shouldn't know? Why did he have to sign an agreement? These are the conditions for entering the laboratory and the precautions. The special training department has to take care of everything. Yu Guang glanced at him and said expressionlessly. Director Han's body trembled. He stood up suddenly and asked in disbelief and excitement, the winner of the Farisk Prize this year? She actually came to the laboratory? This was not on the same level as Luo Yan. Elder Chu's hands trembled. Are you talking about that super scientific research genius who is under special protection? Even Elder Chu had heard of this name many times. She was not to be trifled with. You flatter me. Zhong Xinglin smiled at him and said with a fake smile, our family has only won a few awards. We can't compare to the people who entered the 191st laboratory. This is a serious assessment for you. If she doesn't get special treatment and gets first place, you will say that she cheated. As soon as he finished speaking, Director Han and Elder Chu reacted not long after. Bei Yunj's? Director Han's body stiffened as if he had been struck by lightning. He had never thought that. She was actually not even 20 years old? He had never thought that. With such an identity, she would actually participate in the laboratory assessment. Entering the laboratory, wasn't this overkill? Elder Chu's degree of shock was no less than Director Han's. He had always thought that Bei Yunj was a typical rich second generation who fooled around. In the end, reality played a big trick on him. This girl was actually the S-level special protection target. Usually has a good relationship with Captain Liu and Captain Tan, so she planned to come and help. Zhong Xinglin explained their doubts, but these words were more like a slap to their faces. It was burning and painful. It's true that I didn't consider her special identity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let Guru suffer here. At this moment. Only then did Chief Han realize that he had almost given up for Luo Yan. No matter how talented Luo Yan was, he had never won any international awards. But it hadn't even been a year since he'd appeared out of nowhere, but he'd already been nominated for 2 international mega awards. Country was racking their brains trying to poach him. But in the end, because of the discrimination of the guest country, he was rejected in a high-profile manner at the award ceremony in Farisk. If it were someone else, would they have the guts to do this? Chief Han's face was stiff and his mind was in a mess. At the district entrance, Bei Yunj kicked the snow around his feet and put his hands in his pockets lazily. The cold wind was still blowing in his ears, but his eyes kept glancing at the entrance of the district. As expected. In less than 5 minutes, a black Lincoln limousine suddenly stopped at the entrance. As soon as the car door was pushed open, the man's straight and ascetic long legs under his suit pants came into view. Soon she saw the man's handsome and noble face. However, just as Bei Yunj was contemplating whether or not he should lure the man in first, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly the girl's shy voice sounded from the door. "Mister, what brings you here?" "Bei Yunj, it was better to get him home early so as not to attract bees and butterflies." End of chapter. Chapter 993. Bei Yunj had just walked forward when she heard the man's deep and magnetic voice. He said slowly, "I'm here to bring my family home." As soon as he finished speaking, the girl, who was originally full of joy, froze. Then, before she could react, she heard the man suddenly say unhurriedly, "Why are you standing so far away, Yunyun?" The girl followed Huashidu's gaze and turned around. She saw an unbelievably beautiful girl. Bei Yunj glanced at him leisurely and walked towards the door without saying a word. It seemed like she did not intend to talk to him. However, the corners of the man's lips curled up. His peach blossom eyes were half closed, and the curve of his smile was light and seductive. He gently held the girl's wrist with one hand. "You haven't packed your luggage and you're already leaving?" Bei Yunj finally reacted. She had not brought anything back on the way here. Why did she start to lose her mind when it came to Huashidu? "Assistant Tseng, can you accompany me to get something?" Bei Yunj asked Assistant Tseng, who was behind her. Assistant Tseng's eyelids twitched. He did not expect to be implicated even when he was lying down. But fortunately, the man beside her let go of her hand and suppressed the low laughter in his voice. "Go with her to get it. Then, at the same time, ask around if there are any arrogant brats who are having ideas that they shouldn't." Before Bei Yunj could speak, the man said unhurriedly, "That way I can be at ease. Otherwise I'll have raised you for nothing." Bei Yunj, however, along the way, Assistant Tseng, who was following behind, was really paying attention to which member of the opposite sex took a few more glances at Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched, but she could not be bothered to say anything. She had been in the district for so long, but she did not know any members of the opposite sex, let alone get close to them. But when she was about to reach the southern district, suddenly someone stopped Bei Yunj. "Student Pei, can I invite you to have dinner with me today?" Bei Yunj looked up and saw a delicate-looking boy with a red face and a bouquet of flowers in his hands. Trouble came as she wished. Before Bei Yunj could say anything, she saw Tseng Su's eyes full of condemnation, as if he was accusing her. She turned around and asked the boy, "Do you know me?" Unexpectedly, the boy's neck turned red as he said agitatedly, "Classmate Pei, you're amazing. That night, I can't forget you again." No matter how he listened to it, his words didn't sound right. Bei Yunj, what a mess. Not long after, Bei Yunj realized that the boy was probably talking about her hacking the system on the first day of the special training class. "Sorry, I have to go home." Bei Yunj smiled lazily and said, "My brother is very strict at home." Meanwhile, the office. "President Hua, this medicine is..." Zhong Xinglin was stunned when he saw the logo on the medicine box. "Wasn't this logo exclusive to Luo Su from Continent K? I got someone to develop a new drug based on her physical condition." Washidu handed Zhong Xinglin a business card. Mr. Zhong, you can take this for testing first. If there's anything else you can look for him. Zhong Xinglin looked at the plain white business card. There was only a simple name, address and contact information printed on it. He could already confirm that this was developed by Luo Su. At this moment, Zhong Xinglin realized that the young president of the Hua group was even more complicated than he had imagined. Although Luo Su was famous in the medical field, he had always been in hiding. Almost no one could find him. Not to mention asking him to help develop drugs. P.S. I've been dealing with the plagiarism issue for the past few days. The lawyer and editor project team have been working non-stop and are not in a good state. Sorry. But there will be an explanation today. It's been hard on the editor. Next, I will update properly and slowly make up for it. It's still a slow process. End of chapter. Chapter 994. Zhong Xinglin wanted to say something but hesitated. He looked at Huashidu for a while and spoke in a probing tone. President Hua, why don't you give it to Guru yourself? Zhong Xinglin also felt that the man in front of him, whose identity was a mystery, was very dangerous to Bei Yunj. The man's slender fingers, which were holding the cigarette, paused for a moment before he casually stuffed the cigarette back into the cigarette box. Elder Zhong, I can give the young lady whatever she likes. If she wants to know anything, I won't hide it from her. But since she has her own path, I'll accompany and protect her. There was only one girl in his heart. It would not be too much to spoil her. Huashidu's meaning was very obvious. If Bei Yunj did not intend to tell him, he would not deliberately ask. But if something happened, this girl would still be under his care. Zhong Xinglin's eyes flashed. He did not expect Huashidu to say that. On the other side, Assistant Tseng followed Bei Yunj into the southern district. When he opened the door of room 102, his eyelids twitched. Initially, he had thought that with Miss Pei's background, she would definitely not be able to withstand the hardships in the district, especially when she was living in the same dormitory as others. But in the end, Bei Yunj's single room was comparable to a five-star hotel? Others were suffering in the district, but was she here to visit incognito? There's only one suitcase. Bei Yunj pushed out a suitcase that was not full. Assistant Tseng quickly went to take it. But in the next moment, Bei Yunj dragged the suitcase away and suddenly asked lazily, Assistant Tseng, you won't really complain to my brother later, right? Assistant Tseng was stunned. He used silence to respond to Bei Yunj's true thoughts. Bei Yunj? He was really planning to complain about her. Bei Yunj glanced at him lazily and explained patiently, I don't know who he is either. Assistant Tseng nodded desperately and went to take Bei Yunj's luggage. Miss, let me take it. If Huashidu saw that Bei Yunj was the one who carried the suitcase back, he would not be able to keep his job. But then, Bei Yunj glanced at him and dragged her suitcase downstairs. Seeing this, Assistant Tseng chased after her anxiously. His smile was uglier than his crying face. Miss Pei, you should let me take it. Otherwise, I won't be able to answer to Master Du. How are you going to complain about me later? Bei Yunj asked lazily as she dragged her suitcase with one hand and gently put on her black mask with the other. Assistant Tseng. He could tell that Miss Pei was trying to drag him down with her. Assistant Tseng, think about it carefully. I still hold grudges. Bei Yunj's eyes curved into crescents as she threatened him in a casual tone. The corners of Assistant Tseng's mouth twitched. He could only bite the bullet and agree. Miss Pei, I'll listen to you. A short while later. When Bei Yunj walked to the door, she found Zhong Xinglin chatting with Huashidu. She raised her eyebrows. Elder Zhong. Zhong Xinglin glanced at Bei Yunj, who was walking over, and smiled. The matter has been resolved. Someone will come to apologize in a few days. The teachers in the special training department are also being investigated. Don't forget to come to the institute tomorrow. Bei Yunj nodded and replied, okay. However, just as Bei Yunj finished chatting with Zhong Xinglin and walked towards Huashidu. Master Du, that's what I heard when I was over there. Bei Yunj looked up and saw Assistant Tseng complaining. He looked very loyal to Huashidu. End of chapter. Chapter 995. The next moment, Tseng Su turned around and did not expect to see Bei Yunj looking at him with a faint smile. Just as Tseng Su was feeling guilty, Bei Yunj walked towards Huashidu. However, suddenly an excited voice sounded not far away. Brother Hua. Bei Yunj subconsciously raised her eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, she saw a girl wearing a sheepskin coat with two ponytails waving at her. However, to Bei Yunj's surprise, Wen Jiuan was beside the girl. Are you here to look for your uncle? Huashidu glanced at the girl walking over and asked casually. Wei Huan was Huashidu's distant cousin. She had just entered high school and rarely saw her. Yes. Wei Huan nodded like she was pecking at rice. However, when she saw Bei Yunj beside Huashidu, she immediately became alert. Who are you? Huashidu had lived in the Wei family for a period of time. Wei Huan and Wen Jiuan had been neighbors for a long time, so Wei Huan had always felt that Wen Jiuan would be her cousin-in-law. But now, a beautiful girl suddenly appeared beside Huashidu. Wei Huan's mentality cracked. Miss Pei is here too? Wen Jiuan suddenly asked. Yes. Bei Yunj replied nonchalantly. Sister Wen, do you know her? Wei Huan grabbed Wen Jiuan's hand and was a little angry. How could she get along with her love rival? Miss Pei is very nice. Wen Jiuan nodded honestly. Wei Huan, at this moment. Huashidu glanced at them and was not interested in interrupting. He only said casually, let's go home. Everyone could tell that this sentence was directed at Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj smirked lazily and glanced at the fuming Wei Huan calmly. Okay. Wait. Wei Huan suddenly called out to them. Brother Hua, Sister Wen and I didn't bring a chauffeur. Can we trouble you to give us a ride? Please. The girl blinked her bright black eyes and put her palms together sincerely. Up to you. After Huashidu finished speaking, Seng Su went forward to open the door for them. Brother Hua, get in the car first. Wei Huan specially squeezed beside Huashidu and giggled. After all, she knew in her heart that no matter how undisciplined the men of the Hua family looked, they still had the gentlemanly demeanor engraved in their bones since they were young. Ladies first was a must. Behind her back, Wei Huan was still hinting with her eyes for Wen Jiuan to quickly come to her side. Later he would take the initiative to sit down. Unexpectedly, when Wei Huan turned around, she saw Wen Jiuan chatting with Bei Yunj. Wei Huan, in the car. Seeing that Wen Jiuan did not take the bait, Wei Huan could only follow her own thoughts and sit beside Huashidu. But after he calmed down for half a minute, Wei Huan's body froze and she unconsciously turned her head slowly. Sure enough, she met the man's lazy and indifferent eyes. The danger was self-evident. This cousin of hers would never spoil anyone. Wei Huan shrank her head timidly and silently moved to the side, trying her best to give this person more personal space. Bei Yunj, who was the last to come up, saw this scene and could not help but smile. It was obvious that Wei Huan was quite afraid of Huashidu. However, when Wei Huan saw Bei Yunj sitting in the car, she still pretended that nothing had happened and kept chatting with Wen Jiuan about her past with Wen Jiuan and Huashidu. It was obvious that she wanted to exclude Bei Yunj. End of this chapter. Chapter 996. Bei Yunj leaned lazily and did not interrupt. Wen Jiuan also felt that Wei Huan was targeting Bei Yunj, so she did not continue the conversation. Wei Huan frowned. Sister Wen, why aren't you talking to me anymore? Suddenly, the man who had been silent all this while spoke casually. Wei Huan, there's a seat next to Seng Su in front. Wei Huan immediately shut up. Instantly, the surroundings were silent. Wei Huan pursed her lips and felt wronged. Bei Yunj saw this scene. She smiled and suddenly sat beside Wei Huan. Her beautiful and flamboyant eyes were unbridled, and her eyes were clear and seductive. She smiled lazily and asked, Little girl, do you want to change seats with me? It's quite cold today. Wei Huan's mind went blank. She did not understand what Bei Yunj meant. However, when she saw the empty seat next to Wen Jiuan, she instinctively nodded frantically and immediately walked to Wen Jiuan's side to sit down. But in the next moment, just as Wei Huan felt that she had escaped from the tiger's mouth, she looked up and saw that the person opposite her seemed to want to scratch the tiger's ear. Brother, are you cold? Bei Yunj asked as if there was no one else around. She sat close to the man, and the way her eyes were curved made people reluctant to say harsh words. Wei Huan chuckled. Her acting skills were clumsy. Did she really think that her cousin was an ordinary person? Huashidu had never shown mercy to women who took the initiative to approach him. Then, Wei Huan glanced at Huashidu and Wen Jiuan from time to time. As expected, the man glanced at her with his pale-colored eyes. His posture was lazy and noble, but he did not intend to pay attention to Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj could tell that it was because of Seng Su's complaint just now. She licked her lips and her eyes curved naturally. She touched the back of his hand with her cold hand. The girl's voice was lazy and seductive. Brother, I'm so cold. Even when Jiuan's eyelids twitched, she subconsciously looked at the vixen opposite her. Not to mention Huashidu, even when Jiuan's heart softened when she heard this guy's voice. True enough, the man's fingertips moved. After touching the girl's cold hand, he reached out to hold it and took the initiative to ask, "How many are you wearing?" This scene almost caused the complacent expression on Wei Huan's face to freeze. Where did her cousin, who was not interested in women, go? Why did he have to care about this little demon? However, when Jiuwan seemed to have expected this and did not even lift her eyes. 3 or 4. Bei Yunj saw that Huashidu took the initiative to talk to her, so she naturally reached into the man's coat. This scene caused Wei Huan's eyes to widen as his face flushed red. However, a certain someone in Pei Qian's heart didn't even blush as she hugged the man's tight waist. At this moment, what Wei Huan found the most unbelievable was that Huashidu actually acquiesced to this woman's actions. If it were anyone else who would dare to reach their hand into Huashidu's clothes. This scene made Wen Jiuwan's face burn. She had not expected Bei Yunj to be so bold. Big brother's body is so warm. Bei Yunj took advantage of the fact that there were people around, and her hand even touched the man's tight abdominal muscles as if nothing had happened. The man glanced at her casually, his gaze full of warning. Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj put her hand down obediently. However, Wei Huan saw Bei Yunj rubbing her head against the man's neck restlessly and looking at her with a faint smile. Where did this vixen come from? Chapter 997. Wei Huan was so angry that she wanted to explode. She wanted to drag Bei Yunj far away from her cousin. When Wen Jiuwan saw this scene, the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch. She did not expect Bei Yunj to be so childish. Brother. After Bei Yunj saw the little girl's anger, he turned around and wanted to coax her. You want to accompany Tseng Su too? The man asked unhurriedly. Bei Yunj, why was this D***M man so difficult to coax? Wei Huan also came to deliver her head. Brother Hua, it's Christmas today. Are you planning to go back to the old residence for Christmas? Amo must miss you. It's better for the family to be happy during the holidays. The man's tone was light. How can I be happy with him around? Wei Huan's smile froze. Reality proved that it was better not to talk nonsense with Huashidu. On the court. Only Bei Yunj raised his eyebrows when he heard this. A hint of playfulness flashed past his eyes. After getting out of the car, Wei Huan and Wen Jiuwan greeted each other obediently and asked Tseng Su to send them home. Bei Yunj followed behind Huashidu. He felt that the man's footsteps were getting faster and faster, and it was a little difficult for him to keep up. No matter what, Tseng Su had to take responsibility for this. Suddenly, Huashidu, who was walking in front, heard Bei Yunj's shout and immediately turned around, thinking that Bei Yunj had sprained her ankle. But in the next second, Huashidu saw her pouncing over and subconsciously opened his arms, allowing her to pounce into his arms. She hugged his waist tightly with both hands and refused to let go. Sometimes, the young man's straightforward and passionate love and blatant intimacy were hard to reject. Brother, don't be angry. I didn't go to eat with him either. The surrounding snow covered the sky. The man's tall and jade-like figure looked even more noble. The corners of his lips curled up imperceptibly. However, on the surface he only said casually, "Then when did you go out with him last night?" Bei Yunj. It seemed that Tseng Su could not stay. Before Bei Yunj could say anything, the man suddenly stretched out his hand lazily and tidied the young lady's black hair. His voice was low and magnetic, making people confused. My family's young lady is getting more and more beautiful. It's indeed easy to be thought of. Even Bei Yunj looked at him in a daze. I still have a meeting. Go back and change your clothes first. If you miss old Master Qin, I'll arrange for the driver to send you to the Qin family's old mansion. Bei Yunj inexplicably sensed that the man was not in a good mood. In the living room, Bei Yunj leaned against the sofa and dried her hair. Auntie Miao brought a bowl of soup over. Miss, drink the soup to warm yourself up. Thank you, Aunt Miao. Bei Yunj's lips curved and she took it quickly. Aunt Miao smiled and said, drink slowly. Aunt Miao will help you dry your hair. Auntie Miao had always doted on Bei Yunj and cared about Bei Yunj as much as her own daughter. Sir really dotes on Mississippi usually, Sir never comes back on this day. Auntie Miao smiled as she dried Bei Yunj's hair. Is he at the old mansion? Bei Yunj asked instinctively. Auntie Miao shook her head. Usually Sir is abroad at this time. He will only be back after a month. Bei Yunj's eyes darkened and she drank the soup slower. He must have specially stayed behind to celebrate the festival with Miss. Auntie Miao smiled from ear to ear. Bei Yunj subconsciously looked at the second floor. So, Huashidu heard a knock on the study door. Brother, I have a gift for you after the meeting. The man raised his eyebrows, but the others in the video did not hear the sound outside the door. End of chapter. Chapter 998. However, when they saw the president suddenly stop, everyone was a little confused. Then, when the next person began to report, everyone was still in a heavy mood and did not dare to look up at the man's expression. Who knew? The man's slender and good-looking fingertips tapped the back of his hand rhythmically and suddenly said, "The meeting ends here. Other than the improvements I mentioned, we'll discuss everything else next time." After that, the man directly cut off the video conference. The others looked at each other and did not leave. "Boss, what's going on?" Someone could not help but ask. Could it be that President Hua is also celebrating the holiday with someone today? A certain senior executive who had always been famous for his gossip looked at Tseng Su excitedly. "President Tseng, don't you think so?" "I don't know, don't ask me." Tseng Su continued to chat. Just as he was drinking tea guiltily, he heard another senior executive ask excitedly. "President Hua, could it be that he's hiding a mistress and has a girlfriend?" Tseng Su spat out his tea. "Hey, that's not right. I heard that some time ago, there was a young lady who went to the president's office in a private elevator. If it's a girlfriend, it should be this one, right?" "You're wrong. I saw this young lady last time too. She was still wearing her school uniform. No matter how scumbag President Hua is, it's impossible for him to lay his hands on a female high school student." Tseng Su's hand trembled so much that he could not hold the teacup properly. Was that a female high school student? She was clearly a vixen. She had completely eaten Master Du. On the other side, Bei Yunj was still sending messages to the small group. "Bei Yunj, what gift should I give a boy for Christmas? He'll be happier?" "Lu Yuanxi? Chu Zhixing, Daddy Pei, are you in a relationship?" "Lu Yuanxi, we're working hard in high school and you're taking leave to date." Bei Yunj. "Oh." Immediately after, Lu Yuanxi's attitude took a 180-degree turn. "Lu Yuanxi, give him shoes and watches. They're all good." Bei Yunj also remembered that she had bought a watch last time. She also walked towards the drawer while sending messages. "Bei Yunj, what if he's not in a good mood? How can I make him happy?" As soon as this message was sent, Lu Yuanxi was silent. Only Chu Zhixing sent 5 words. "Then give him more gifts?" Bei Yunj had no other choice. She rummaged through the house but she didn't find any Christmas gifts. However, she had changed into a little red dress that the man had bought from somewhere last time. It was considered a little more festive. However, she really couldn't find too many gifts, so Bei Yunj decided to use the gifts that she had originally given Mo to make up the numbers. A few minutes later, Bei Yunj carried a pile of gift boxes and pushed open the man's bedroom door. The style of the man's bedroom was cold, black, white and gray, ascetic and cold. The only place where she could store her surprise was the small wardrobe. However, when Bei Yunj opened the wardrobe door, she found that the wardrobe was divided into 2 layers. On the lower level there were men's suits. The upper level was empty. Bei Yunj looked at the wardrobe that was almost taller than her. 3 minutes later, Bei Yunj sat on the upper floor of the wardrobe and found a box that looked very familiar. It seemed like it belonged to her. Bei Yunj opened the box and found that it contained the cat ear headband that Lu Yuanxi had given her last time. This D*MN man had actually kept it. Bei Yunj adjusted her emotions and was about to arrange the gifts when she suddenly thought of something. End of this chapter. Chapter 999. Her eyes flickered and her gaze landed on the cat ear headband. She licked her lips and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Bei Yunj picked up the cat ear headband, touched the furry cat ears and put it on her head first. Then, she continued to lay out the gifts. However, unexpectedly, just as Bei Yunj was halfway through, she suddenly heard a commotion outside the door. She paused. She did not expect Huashidu's meeting to end so quickly. When she came back to her senses, Bei Yunj simply closed the wardrobe door. She planned to leave quietly after the man left. At this moment, Huashidu pushed the door open and entered. He had indeed come in to take something. He also noticed that the lights in the bedroom seemed to have been switched on. However, the man only glanced over indifferently and took out the bracelet he had bought for Bei Yunj in our nation. However, just as Huashidu was about to turn around and leave with the bracelet gift box, the system bell suddenly rang in the wardrobe. The man stopped in his tracks. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched in the wardrobe. She slowly lowered her head to look at the phone beside her. Lu Yuanxi could have called at any other time. Why did he have to call it this time? Bei Yunj had a bad feeling and her breathing became lighter. But at the same time, the man's lips curled up lazily and he walked towards the wardrobe. Finally he stopped in front of Bei Yunj. Just as Bei Yunj was about to move, a ray of light shone directly into her eyes from the gap in the wardrobe door. Bei Yunj's eyelashes fluttered subconsciously. She looked up and met the man's eyes. The man had almost sensed that Bei Yunj should be hiding here. He did not know what she was doing. However, the moment the door opened and he saw the girl's appearance clearly, the man's eyes darkened. It was so dark that it seemed to be able to hide all the light and devour everything. The girl in front of him had slightly curly black hair and was dressed in a seductive red dress. Under the light, her slender and fair legs made one's blood boil. Especially when the little girl had 2 cat ears on her head, it made the man's dark eyes unable to hide his lust. The atmosphere was silent for a few seconds. Bei Yunj licked her red lips and adjusted her sitting posture slightly. Her slender and beautiful white legs dangled and she was not as casual as before. She placed her hands on the edge of the floor and thought for a while. She didn't notice that her shoulder strap had slipped. "Brother, do you like elk?" Bei Yunj saw that the man was staring at her. She wanted to take out the little elk she had prepared for Mo to ease the awkward atmosphere. However, in the next second, the man opened the gift box slowly with his well-defined hands and said casually, "I don't like it." Bei Yunj, how could he continue coaxing her? Suddenly, the man's voice was languid and seductive as he said lightly, "Big brother likes little wild cats more." Before Bei Yunj could react, Bei Yunj felt a little cold touch on her ankle. She instinctively lowered her head. It was originally a bracelet for Bei Yunj, but now it looked better as an ankle bracelet. Especially the little girl's slender ankles. The darkness in the man's eyes disappeared in a flash. Bei Yunj looked at the man's lowered eyes. His handsome and noble eyes were serious. However, at this moment, the man was only putting on an ankle bracelet for her. Her heart inexplicably skipped a beat. After fastening it, the man looked up and Bei Yunj's eyes met his dark and unreadable eyes. In addition to some special and burning emotions, there seemed to be some kind of desire. End of chapter. Chapter 1000. Bei Yunj sat in the closet and looked at the man's appearance from this angle. For some reason her heart itched. The corners of her lips curled up and she tucked her black hair behind her ear. She bent down gently and said in a teasing tone, "Brother, the gift you gave me is only a chain?" Sensing the young girl's fragrance approaching, the man's lazy eyes still looked refined and lazy, but there was a darkness in his eyes. "No, that's too petty." The young lady was obviously going to torture Hoshidu. Her eyes curved and she looked even more seductive. "I have to find other gifts." At this moment, Bei Yunj bent down and wanted to touch the man's pocket. The man did not stop the young lady from being presumptuous. In the bedroom, the gentle light shone on the man's side profile, making him look lazy and ostentatious. His smooth eyebrows were raised, but the aggression in his eyes did not decrease. The man looked up, and Bei Yunj met the man's dark eyes at a close distance. The emotions that were usually suppressed deep down were now ostentatious and straightforward. Bei Yunj's heart was in a mess for some reason. She almost fell from her seat, but the man supported her back with one hand. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. She sensed that the atmosphere was not right and instinctively wanted to straighten up. But then, the man quickly grabbed the back of her neck. His warm fingers caressed her flirtatiously, making her feel numb in her bones and her legs go weak. In this position, Bei Yunj subconsciously noticed the man's light red thin lips. They were so close that it was too flirtatious. But she did not dare to move. The man slowly reached out and straightened the pair of furry cat ears on her head. "Aren't you going to continue searching?" Bei Yunj heard the man chuckle softly. It was the kind of voice that made his throat tremble with joy. It was so deep that it made one's face burn. The next moment, Hoshidu glanced at the young lady and gently pressed the switch on the wall. The floor that Bei Yunj was sitting on started to descend. Bei Yunj realized that it could be lowered automatically. Bei Yunj, she had been careless. Not long after, Bei Yunj looked up and saw the man looking at her with a faint smile. There was a hint of teasing in his eyes. It was as if he was certain that she would not make a move. Suddenly, Bei Yunj's knees were half straightened and she reached her hand into the man's suit pocket. The man also felt the little girl's soft and boneless hand on his leg. The little girl's furry cat ears were rubbing against his well-defined jaw. "Brother, did you really hide other gifts?" Bei Yunj had just raised her chin when the man suddenly reached out and grabbed Bei Yunj's waist, carrying her down with one hand. The little girl's subconscious action of hooking her arms around the man's neck made him feel much better. He licked the tip of his teeth and asked in amusement, "Pei Yunj, are you going to touch wherever I ask you to?" Being alone with a man and a woman, this little girl was not afraid of causing trouble at all. Pei Yunj, why did her words sound so vulgar? Washidu had just placed her on the bed. But in the next second, Pei Yunj pushed him away and got off the bed. Merry Christmas ended here. But right after that, the man scooped her up and gently restrained her hands from behind. His chin gently rubbed against the hollow of her neck. He laughed softly and coaxed her. "Why are you angry? Didn't you say that you wanted to give brother a gift?" Pei Yunj was expressionless. "You said that I was despicable." "No." The man slowly refused to admit it. Chapter 1001. Pei Yunj was about to turn her head when her gaze landed on the full-length mirror not far away from the man. The next moment, the man's deep and magnetic voice was filled with sexy and lazy laughter as he whispered into her ear, "Yes, it's mainly because brother wants to be lewd." Before Pei Yunj could react, she saw the man's lips curl up in the mirror. The man suddenly bent down and nibbled on her cat ears. The way he nibbled on her ears made her blush and her heart beat faster. His eyes stared straight at her. Pei Yunj froze. The man's flirtatious and ambiguous low laughter made her ears turn red and hot. She was so grateful that her entire body went soft. "Where's our Yunyun's little tail?" Pei Yunj's heart beat wildly for some reason. She did not dare to look into the man's eyes. She did not notice that there was a faint pink on her snow-white skin. At this moment, the way the man in front of her smiled was simply the epitome of a refined scum. The next day, "Miss, what happened to your foot?" Aunt Meow exclaimed. Pei Yunj, the man who had just come downstairs, smirked and said naturally, "I bumped into something." "Aunt Meow, prepare a few more bottles of Dieta wine at home next time." Huashidu glanced at her slowly and said with a smile, "I'll prepare it." Pei Yunj, last night she had been flirted with by the man until she was dizzy. When she ran away at the last minute, she accidentally bumped into the cabinet. When the private doctor came, he even reminded Pei Yunj that young people had to restrain themselves. It was not safe to have a too exciting experience. Thinking of this, Pei Yunj glanced at Huashidu with an unfriendly gaze. However, the man smiled silently and walked to Pei Yunj's side to sit down. "Yunyun gave brother a present last night. Brother likes it very much." For a moment, Pei Yunj did not know if the present Huashidu was talking about was the one she had placed in the closet or something else. Then Pei Yunj heard a certain someone say gently, "If there's a tail, brother will like it even more." Pei Yunj, was this dog man like this during the day as well? Seeing that Pei Yunj didn't want to talk to him, the man just lowered his head and laughed. He put one hand on the back of her chair and gently stuffed something into her pocket with his slender fingers. "There was a gift last night, but I forgot to give it to our Yunyun." Huashidu reached out and scratched the little girl's chin. Pei Yunj heard him say, "The key you threw on the table last time was to a laboratory next to the computing institute." "Laboratory?" Pei Yunj's eyes flickered. She looked up at Huashidu and subconsciously took out the key. Why would he think of sending her to the lab? "Last time, Elder Zhong told me that you are also very interested in research." Pei Yunj. "So you're giving me the lab?" If she was purely interested, wasn't Huashidu burning money? He reached out and gently pinched Pei Yunj's face. He said regretfully, "Yes, brother also asked Mr. Zhong if he could sell the computing institute to me. Unfortunately, he didn't agree." Pei Yunj. He still wanted to buy her a computing institute? But at this moment, Pei Yunj's thoughts were not on this. Otherwise, she would have realized that something was wrong. She had been thinking since last night about why Huashidu had been abroad all these years. "Brother, are you going on a business trip this month?" Pei Yunj suddenly asked. Huashidu's pale eyes glanced at her. "Are you chasing me away?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1002. No. Pei Yunj looked at him. "Don't you have to go out every year at this time of the year?" The man's eyes dimmed and he smiled. "I'm going out for a few days. I'll be back soon." Pei Yunj thought for a while and said, "Actually, I can go with you." The man's peach blossom eyes curved when he heard this. His light-colored eyes were flirtatious and seductive. He reached out and scratched the girl's chin. "I'll take you there when you recover." At the Psychological Research Institute. Cui Hengchuan noticed the bandage on Pei Yunj's leg as soon as he entered. "Are you injured?" Bei Yunj answered without hesitation, yes. Bei Yunj didn't notice any of this. Cui Hengchuan's lips curled up imperceptibly. He walked to the water dispenser and poured a glass of water for Bei Yunj. Then, Bei Yunj instinctively took the water from Cui Hengchuan and she paused. She realized that she didn't seem to be too guarded against Cui Hengchuan. Actually, Bei Yunj didn't like Cui Hengchuan all this time. But she didn't know when she started to have a good impression of Cui Hengchuan. It was a good impression of a friend. Be careful when you walk next time. Cui Hengchuan sat in front of the table. He looked gentle and harmless. Bei Yunj's eyes dimmed and she put the glass on the table. She tapped the chair handle with her fingertips. Dr. Cui, we've done hypnosis 5 times since I first entered this institute? That's right. Cui Hengchuan's eyes flashed and he looked up with a smile. Considering Miss Pei's personal situation, the frequency is too high. Was Dr. Cui the only one who did the hypnosis? Cui Hengchuan said, there was also my assistant and Dr. Huang, Mr. Zhong's high school classmate. He hid the emotions in his eyes and asked gently, what's wrong? Nothing. Did Dr. Huang come today? Bei Yunj asked. No, Cui Hengchuan said. Bei Yunj nodded. Then make an appointment next time. I have something on today. After that, Bei Yunj left unhurriedly. Cui Hengchuan looked at Bei Yunj's back and couldn't help but smile. Master, why did you choose her? Jianghu walked out from the back and looked at Bei Yunj's departing figure. She felt depressed. Cui Hengchuan lit a cigarette. The cigarette but was red for a moment. He slowly blew out a smoke ring and said with a faint smile, because I really want her. Jianghu subconsciously clenched her fists. She had sensed that Cui Hengchuan was interested in Bei Yunj when he raced with Bei Yunj in the store. But she seems to have sensed something. Cui Hengchuan didn't care and opened the medical record book. It's okay. Even if she wants to change people, they will be my people. For example, old Master Zhong's old classmate, Dr. Huang. He clearly saw how he hypnotized Bei Yunj and injected the drug into Bei Yunj. However, he was very tight-lipped and knew whose side he was on. But she's too smart. She even sensed her own emotions. This was something Cui Hengchuan didn't expect. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to sense it after just 4 injections. Jianghu's eyes lit up. Yes, master. This is too risky. What's more, Country A values her so much. Ask them to send the 7 experimental drug this week. Cui Hengchuan curled his lips. I'm looking forward to seeing how she falls in love with me. End of chapter. Chapter 1003. Jianghu pursed her lips, her expression a little ugly. She did not expect Cui Hengchuan to be so determined to get Bei Yunj. At the Computing Institute. What's wrong? Soon Shang Yin picked up the call. His gentle voice was clear and pleasant. Get me a reliable psychiatrist. Bei Yunj adjusted the white coat she had put on slowly. Shang Yin, who was in country art, paused. What happened? Bei Yunj told Shang Yin about her. You think this is abnormal because you don't dislike him anymore? Bei Yunj frowned. Isn't this abnormal enough? Shang Yin suppressed his smile. All right, I'll be satisfied with a doctor you're satisfied with to take care of you. Don't arrange for him to come over directly. Let him use his connections at the research institute. Bei Yunj licked her lips, her eyes unreadable. I don't want to alert him yet. If it weren't for the drug allergy, she would have almost forgotten that the original owner had many allergens. But most importantly, the original owner was allergic to most hallucinogenic drugs like her. At the same time, this reminded her that her feelings for Cui Hengchuan were indeed abnormal. So, what was Cui Hengchuan trying to do? Suddenly, I heard that there's a psychological laboratory in Continent K that often does experiments on mental control of humans. It seems that someone is researching some kind of mental medicine this year. Shang Yin also thought about this. What's the name of your attending doctor? Cui Hengchuan. I'll arrange for someone to investigate. Shang Yin was silent for a moment. If you're right, this matter won't be easy to resolve. Bei Yunj smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. After living for so many years, someone really dared to experiment on her. A few days passed. Bei Yunj had just left the research lab when she received a call. After hanging up, she turned around and heard Si Qingyan ask casually. Master Pei, what happened? Bei Yunj glanced at him. Let me go back to school. What's there to go back to? Don't waste any more time at this critical juncture. Si Qingyan said nonchalantly. No, we have to see how our little Chu and little Lu are doing. Bei Yunj was in a good mood as the corners of her lips curled up. Si Qingyan was speechless. Why was she still worried about being a father? Hongda High School. After Pei Yunj entered, she walked straight to the office. The door was half closed, but the voices inside could be heard clearly. Regarding the joint examination of the 9 schools as class teachers, you must urge the students not to lose a single point that they should get. Do you hear me? The principal continued. In the last mock exam, Yunqing First High School scored a historic 0. 12 points higher than us. Don't you feel threatened? Someone whispered, Principal, there's no need to be so nervous about such a small score. There's no need to be so nervous. The principal's voice became even louder. In the last comprehensive test, the number 1 middle school next door scored the highest in the city. The highest score isn't in our school, and the average score can't be compared to number 1 middle school. What do you class teachers care about? Principal, our school can get the highest score this time. Teacher Wen suddenly interjected. At the same time, Bei Yunj happened to push the door open and enter. Reporting Teacher Wen, I'm back. The next moment, everyone's attention landed on the person at the door. After not seeing her for a few months, the girl's beautiful eyes were still carefree and high-spirited. End of chapter. Chapter 1004. But then, the atmosphere was silent for a long time. The principal turned to look at Teacher Wen expressionlessly. Old one, are you crazy or am I crazy? Why did you ask Bei Yunj to come back at this time? Bei Yunj looked up at him. Question mark. The principal continued, Are you a spy from the number 1 high school next door? Do you think the average score isn't low enough? Bei Yunj was speechless. Didn't I ask Ge to come back to win glory for our school? Teacher Wen clarified. When the principal heard this, he was so angry that he pointed at Teacher Wen for a long time, speechless. How many months had it been since Bei Yunj went to class? He was still counting on Bei Yunj to turn the tide. Bei Yunj, go home and stay, the principal turned and said. Unexpectedly, Bei Yunj said slowly, I'm here to take the joint examination. In an instant, the form teachers were silent. How could this teacher and student be so stubborn? Why did they have to go against the principal? The form teacher of class 7 sneered. It seems that Teacher Wen is very confident in his student. Principal, give her a chance. What if she can get first place in the 9 schools? With that said, everyone knew that the form teacher of class 7 wanted to bring up old scores. After all, in the past few months, Leia's scores had improved by leaps and bounds. Leia also got first place in the previous mock exam. And the form teacher of class 7 had always hated Bei Yunj. Everyone knew that. This time it was a good opportunity for her to slap her in the face. The principal looked at the form teacher of class 7 and frowned. But then, Bei Yunj asked, when is the exam? 2 days later, Teacher Wen said. The principal's face turned green when he heard them echoing each other. Then I'll stay in school for 2 days and go back after the exam. With that, Bei Yunj turned around and waved. Goodbye, teachers. The form teachers were speechless. They hadn't seen this guy for a few months, but he was still as wild as ever. Year 3 Class 1. It's over. Our school's average score can't be compared to the number 1 middle school next door. We'll probably have to add another hour to the evening self-study session. The students in the class leaned back in their chairs dejectedly. Then we'll have to work at least 2 more hours, another person muttered. Didn't their class always drag them down when it came to the average grade? Number 1 high school is too strong now. What can we do? The first place in our grade can only be ranked 3rd in their school. Immediately after, someone said sneakily, who do you think will get first place in the joint examination of the 9 schools this time? I bet on Zhou Han from number 1 middle school. It might be Leia too. Her points have been increasing at a terrifying rate recently. It's also possible for Song Yao from number 1 high school. She's only 2 points lower than Zhou Yu. Everyone was talking about it. Suddenly, when someone saw the figure at the door, his eyes lit up and he exclaimed, Master Pei. Are you stupid? Master Pei isn't even back yet and he's still in first place. After saying that, the boy reached out and slapped his desk mate. But suddenly Chu Zhixing stood up. Master Pei. At this moment, everyone realized that something was wrong. When they looked at the door, they saw a girl wearing a loose sweater with a red and white knitted design. Her black hair was loose and she was so beautiful that people couldn't come back to their senses. Why are you back? Chu Zhixing was a little incoherent, his eyes filled with joy. I'm here to attend classes for 2 days and get first place for Hongda. Her tone was slow, but no one dared to forget this person's terrifying operation. After all, she was a big shot who could still be in the top 3 of the grade even if she gave up on the exam. End of chapter. Chapter 1005. The people in Class 1 felt proud and couldn't help but be excited. There's going to be a good show this time. It's a fight between immortals. What do you mean by immortals fighting? Another round-faced girl bit the cap of her pen and looked at Bei Yunja's lazy side profile. She couldn't help but feel pink bubbles in her heart. Master Pei is back. This is called the gods giving way. Lu Yuanxi, who heard from behind, was speechless. Wasn't Bei Yunja's affinity with the same sex ridiculously good? Master Pei, you're giving number 1 high school too much face. That's right. If you come to the exam personally, you'll scare the babies in number 1 high school. The two boys giggled and echoed each other as if they were performing a crosstalk. Then someone started to imitate a baby's cry. It wasn't until Bei Yunja's faint gaze swept over them that they calmed down. Very good, Master Pei was still that Master Pei. He didn't say a word, but he was oppressive. I have friends in number 1 high school. Don't cause trouble, Bei Yunj said leisurely. The boys nodded like they were pecking at rice. They were still smiling mischievously. It was obvious that they were familiar with Bei Yunja's temper, but they didn't dare to say anything. At the corner of the door, Leia's back was facing the wall. When Leia heard that Bei Yunj was back, she couldn't help but come to take a look. However, when she heard what Class 1 said, a hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. Class 1 was really a motley crew. Did they think that the joint examination of the 9 schools was that simple? Bei Yunja's attitude of not taking the college entrance examination seriously would cause her to fall into a huge pit sooner or later. For example, the joint examination in 2 days' time. The corners of Leia's mouth curled up. She couldn't help but leave briskly. Number 1 high school. What? Hungda still has a seated contestant? The teachers of number 1 high school were also investigating the enemy. I heard that there's someone called Bei Yunj in Hungda's grade 12 class 1. He previously got 3rd place in the cohort. Hearing this, a teacher chuckled. 3rd place in the cohort is nothing. What's so strange? When he abandoned the math exam, he got 3rd place in the cohort. As soon as he finished speaking, the venue fell into dead silence. He could get 3rd place in the cohort after abandoning the math exam. Director, it's the mock exam that Hungda and us organized in the 2nd year of high school? That person's voice became softer and softer. Out of the 2 schools, the only one who scored full marks in the comprehensive science exam is her. At this time, everyone started to feel their scalps go numb, because they clearly remembered that the exam questions were very difficult. The highest score in their school was 249, but Hungda had someone who scored full marks in science. Ms. Lee, don't think too much about it. I also heard from Hungda that Bei Yunj hasn't been to school for a few months. She doesn't take her grades seriously at all. Another teacher smiled and said, the teachers in her school don't think that she can get 1st place. What are you nervous about? But this is really a dark horse. Why are you panicking? Johan's grades in our school are so stable. Is there anyone who can do better than him? The teachers of the 2 schools had different thoughts. They were all waiting for the joint examination of the 9 schools. After school, the students of Hungda saw the school bell, Song Yao, standing at their school gate. Initially, he was still wondering who was the one who had hooked up with the school bell next door. He did not expect to see Bei Yunj greeting Song Yao. The boys in the same class were already whistling. Master Pei, you even got the school bell next door. Bei Yunj was speechless. Song Yao walked over and stared at her. You have to treat me to ice cream. Bei Yunj touched the tip of her nose. Song Yao, it's winter. End of chapter. Chapter 1006. Who asked you to say that you didn't come for the exam? You're a liar. Song Yao held Bei Yunj's hand and went to the ice cream shop next door. No, we can only drink milk tea. Bei Yunj hugged her shoulders and turned Song Yao to the milk tea shop. Looking at Song Yao's gentle and pretty eyes, she unconsciously supported her head with her hand and looked at her. What are you looking at? Song Yao also wanted to question Bei Yunj confidently, but looking at Bei Yunj's lazy smile, her eyes inexplicably drifted away. Song Yao, you're too fierce. She smiled and reached out to search Song Yao's head. Bei Yunj had only agreed to come to the 9 schools joint examination after receiving a call. Song Yao glared at her and took the milk tea Bei Yunj handed her. Did the teacher ask you to come back? Bei Yunj leaned against the glass wall lazily and drank milk tea. But suddenly she heard a sound at the door. What's so good about Hungda now? Our school has the highest average score and the highest score. With that said, Bei Yunj and Song Yao looked up at the door at the same time. Are they your juniors? Bei Yunj went up to Song Yao and asked. Song Yao's eyes were gentle, but they were still indifferent. I don't know them. Then, the two small groups at the door started to argue. Didn't number 1 high school do well this time? Do you really think you're so important after surpassing them once? The tone of the students from number 1 high school became even more mocking. Surpassing them once? I think other than Qing Zihuai, who has already left, there's only a bunch of trash left in Hengda. These words made Song Yao frown and she looked at the boy coldly. What questions do you not know today? Show me. Bei Yunj did not care much about the argument outside. Instead, he asked Song Yao to take out the exercises and the two of them studied quietly in the milk tea shop. However, the two groups of people outside were already scratching their heads and scratching their faces as they started fighting. Bei Yunj looked up and lowered his head to study the questions. He looked quite interested. The only thing missing was a plate of melon seeds on the table. Song Yao said, Yunj, let's go. Okay. Bei Yunj responded and packed her things with Song Yao, preparing to leave. But what he didn't expect was, before Bei Yunj could leave, they were taken away by Hengda's Dean of Teaching as troublemakers. Hengda Student Office. Both teams had injuries on their faces. Only Bei Yunj and Song Yao stood at the side. You're rebelling? The joint examination of the 9 schools is in 2 days, and you dare to fight at the gate now? Since you guys are so capable, why don't you compare the results of the joint examination? The students from both teams didn't look too good. Suddenly, a student from number 1 middle school said, Director, we're not Hengda students. We want to go back. Did I tell you not to go back? The head of teaching sneered, wait for your school's teachers to come and pick him up. After that, the dean scolded them one by one. But unexpectedly, the last one was Bei Yunj. You're also blindly getting involved? The teaching director was furious. This Bei Yunj did not do anything good usually. She was always on the list of bad people. I'm passing by. Bei Yunj glanced at his watch. Teacher, she's tutoring me, Song Yao explained. But when the dean heard this, he chuckled. You're Song Yao from number 1 middle school, right? Song Yao nodded. Yes. You asked her to tutor you? The dean's words were filled with distrust. How could he not know Bei Yunj's capabilities? End of chapter. Chapter 1007. How could Bei Yunj tutor the second grader in number 1 high school? Did she think everyone was a fool? Several teachers from number 1 high school also came to collect their students. When they saw these students causing trouble, their expressions did not look good. Dean, our students from number 1 high school have caused trouble for Hengda. The vice principal of number 1 high school smiled. Hengda students are definitely at fault in this matter. Not only that, but it also involved our third-year high school students. The dean was very polite to the vice principal of number 1 high school, almost flattering him. This puzzled the students of Hengda. Year 3. The vice principal of number 1 high school glanced at some people and said mockingly, You're not studying in year 3 and are fighting with year 1 and year 2 students? No wonder Hengda's enrollment rate is so worrying. These words angered the students of Hengda so much that their expressions turned ugly. However, the dean still smiled apologetically. You're right. Old Lu, can I take my students away first? Seeing that someone was supporting him, the vice principal felt better. Director Lu continued, Of course. At this moment, the vice principal glanced at the others with some disdain. I'm also looking forward to the results of your year 3 and year 2 students in the joint examination of the 9 schools this time. Let's see if your confidence is because of your ability. Hearing these insulting words, the other students were suppressed and did not dare to speak. Their hearts were burning with anger. But suddenly, the girl's lazy and clear voice sounded slowly. Vice Principal, you're too polite. After all, our Hengda is a century-old school. There are many top scorers in the college entrance examination. Why would we care about the results once or twice? These words made the students of Hengda look at Bei Yunj in admiration. She was indeed an influential figure in Hengda. Senior pay was amazing. Bei Yunj. Director Lu's expression changed. Song Yao, who was beside him, also knew that if she wasn't in number 1 high school, Bei Yunj's words wouldn't have been so nice. You're Bei Yunj? When the vice principal heard this familiar name, he asked in an unfriendly tone. Bei Yunj glanced at him lazily, having no intention of replying to him. This made the vice principal's expression darken. He had been in #1 middle school for so many years. Who dared to give him attitude? Lu Ginghui, the students of your school are very courageous. The vice principal flew into a rage. Vice Principal Bei Yunj is like this. She treats everyone like this. Director Lu had been secretly currying favor with the leaders of #1 middle school and wanted to transfer to #1 middle school. Of course, he did not want his career to be ruined because of Hengda's students. Suddenly, a voice came from the door. Principal, the directors of your school are quite unique. They don't protect their own students externally, but they are united internally? Everyone turned around and saw the principal of Hengda walking in with a handsome young man. Professor C has a good eye. The principal's gaze was so dark that Director Lu did not dare to look him in the eye. The person beside her was Si Qingyan. Principal, Director Lu immediately stuttered. He did not know if the principal had seen him fawning over the vice principal of #1 high school. Bei Yunj was the one who disrespected the teachers. I also saw that after she came back from her leave, her behavior became even more unreasonable, so Director Lu, are you saying that our computing institute taught bad people? Si Qingyan asked with a smile, but the coldness in his eyes did not diminish. What? Not only Director Lu, even the principal of Hengda and the vice principal of #1 high school looked at him instinctively. Chapter 1008. Since when did Bei Yunj have anything to do with the Computing Institute? As the top computing institute in the country, the Computing Institute had extremely high requirements for recruitment. Bei Yunj was only a high school student. How was this possible? Bei Yunj also gave Si Qingyan an intriguing look. Si Qingyan was speechless. Was this girl even human? He was protecting her here and she was threatening him? Our old master likes student pay. It's not strange for him to make an exception in the future. Si Qingyan said slowly, all right. Everyone should know that our computing institute has always had a recommendation slot for a university. Instantly, everyone remembered. As the top computing institute in the country, the Computing Institute had signed a cooperation agreement with Yunqing University. Every year, they could send a student to study in the computing department of Yin University. Not to mention Bei Yunj's results. Even if Bei Yunj did not take the college entrance examination, she could successfully enter Yin University through the cooperation mechanism of the Computing Institute. Hearing this, the expression of the vice principal of First High School changed. Back then, his nephew also wanted to enter the Computing Institute, but he was eliminated in the preliminary round. But now, a Year 3 student from Hengda actually had a chance to enter the Computing Institute. This Yunj didn't tell us about this. The principal said with a smile. If Hengda students could enter the Computing Institute, they would have a golden reputation in the future. The vice principal of First High School beside him was so jealous that his face was about to contort. Si Qingyan chuckled and could not help but take revenge. What's there to say about her? She only stayed in the institute for a few days before she went out to play. His tone was sour. Isn't she just relying on the fact that the old master dotes on her? Bei Yunj was speechless. The principal of Hengda's smile froze. So, she hasn't revised her high school homework either? Is she someone who does such a thing? Si Qingyan asked. The principal's expression was a little broken. Instantly, everyone fell silent. What kind of F***king favorite was this? Were all the big shots paving the way for her? At this moment, the students of First High School were completely dumbfounded and their expressions froze. Professor C, we have no intention of arguing with the students. The vice principal knew Si Qingyan's identity and did not dare to offend him. Si Qingyan glanced at him and smiled faintly. It's best if that's the case. It's not up to others to criticize the people in our computing institute. After saying this, the atmosphere grew colder and colder. Not only was Si Qingyan a core member of the Computing Institute, but he was also the youngest computer science professor at Yin University. You're right. The vice principal smiled stiffly. Originally, when he came to Hengda, he didn't plan to give the school leaders any face. However, she did not expect to meet Si Qingyan halfway. After Bei Yunj and the other man left, Song Yao returned halfway. At this moment, the vice principal then realized that Song Yao was there too. Song Yao, were you there just now? Song Yao glanced at the vice principal and said in a pleasant voice, But then, before the vice principal could speak, Song Yao suddenly walked in front of a boy. It was the boy who said that the students of Hengda were all trash at the entrance of the milk tea shop. Song Yao's smiling eyes were still reserved and gentle. She said gently, "Do you think you're not a good-for-nothing?" Instantly, the boy's expression was ugly. The vice principal also warned, "Song Yao, I have something on the day after tomorrow. I'll apply for leave and give up the exam," Song Yao said calmly. "Song Yao, what do you mean? Are you going against the school?" Chapter 1009. Vice Principal, don't you know why our mock exam scores are higher than Hengda's? The moment Song Yao finished speaking, the vice principal's expression changed. Song Yao, shut up. The vice principal was furious when he saw Song Yao. That time, they had won Hengda's mock exam because the teacher who came up with the questions happened to be related to the vice principal. Without the students knowing, the teachers had arranged similar questions for the students of their school. As a result, the average score of that question was much higher than Hengda's. However, Song Yao was the only one who refused to listen. She simply left that question blank and went against the school openly. Otherwise, with Song Yao's results, she would be a few points higher than the first place. Song Yao smiled and said, "Vice Principal, you can't cheat in the college entrance examination." With that said, Song Yao turned and left. The vice principal gritted his teeth, but there was nothing he could do to Song Yao. Indeed, one could not cheat in the college entrance examination. Therefore, first high school still had to rely on Song Yao to get high marks. The next day, the students of Hengda saw a notice. The dean of Year 3 Lu Ginghui was suspended. Currently, the principal was in charge of supervising the Year 3 students. Class 1. Master Pei, oh God, I heard that you brought a few Year 2 and Year 1 boys to fight with the students from first high school next door? Someone said excitedly, Aya, can't you find your brothers in your class for such things in the future? They'll definitely be better than our juniors. Bei Yunj did not expect this matter to become more and more ridiculous. However, she still smiled lazily. Sure, I'll organize a gathering next time. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Chu Zhixing was speechless. Bei Yunj, your examination hall information. Lu Yuanxi glanced at her and gave her the examination hall information. Bei Yunj glanced at it and asked, Where's examination hall 29? Lu Yuanxi paused. First high school. Bei Yunj was speechless. Some things came easily. On the day of the exam, Bei Yunj took the school bus to first high school. Only then did she know that only 2 students from Hengda had been selected to go to first high school. Coincidentally, Bei Yunj was one of them. The other student was a girl. She looked very introverted and did not dare to look up at Bei Yunj the entire time. Until they got out of the car. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows when she saw the school leaders who were attending to her. Vice Principal, good morning. Bei Yunj was all smiles. However, when the vice principal of number 1 middle school saw Bei Yunj, he almost couldn't smile. You're taking the exam in number 1 middle school? Yes. Bei Yunj nodded and walked inside. The vice principal stared at Bei Yunj gloomily and felt inexplicably uneasy. Principal Huang, this student doesn't look like a good student, the dean of first high school said. The vice principal sneered, this student has a solid foundation of connections. By the way, tell the teachers in Bei Yunj to keep an eye on her. Yesterday in Hengda, he also noticed the attitude of the principal of Hengda towards Bei Yunj. He reckoned that Bei Yunj would be nothing more than cannon fodder when she returned for the exam. She would not be a threat to them. However, the vice principal was furious at the thought that Song Yao dared to abandon the exam. Fortunately, Zhou Han was around. Besides, Qin Youjiao, who they had always thought of as the biggest threat, did not come back for the exam. The vice principal heaved a sigh of relief. Hengda had no chance to make a comeback in this joint examination of the 9 schools. Examination Hall 29. The moment Bei Yunj entered, many people were staring at her. Some people even recognized Bei Yunj. Why was she assigned to this examination hall? Someone asked with a smile. P.S. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you for your monthly recommendation. Chapter 1010. The seats in the examination hall of number 1 high school had always been arranged according to results. In this joint examination of the 9 schools, other than the students from other schools, there was not much difference in the order of everyone. Therefore, when Bei Yunj suddenly appeared in the second-to-last examination hall, everyone looked at him meaningfully. The exam is about to start. Is there anyone who hasn't sat down? As soon as the teacher from number 1 high school came in, he glanced at Bei Yunj indifferently. Bei Yunj didn't care too much. After sitting in his seat, He skillfully took off his scarf and folded it into a square to sleep. The teacher's face twitched. Start handing out the papers. After the teacher passed the papers down, his tone was slightly mocking. This is number 1 high school. I don't want messy students to bring bad atmosphere to our school. Students from number 1 high school should also remember that the students from some schools are from a different world from you. Bei Yunj was the only one from another school. Everyone knew who the teacher was talking about. Many students in the examination hall looked at Bei Yunj with eager eyes and were hostile to the students from Hongda. However, about 10 minutes after the papers were handed out, everyone suddenly heard the sound of the papers being flipped. The students from number 1 high school slowly turned their heads. They didn't expect that the first person to flip the papers would be Bei Yunj. Was he doing it blindly? How could he write so fast? At this moment all the students thought so, including the invigilator. However, the sound of Bei Yunj's pen scribbling on the papers was particularly alarming. Not only that, a few minutes later, everyone heard Bei Yunj's annoying tone and smiled lazily. It's so easy. Why did our Hongda teacher answer all these questions? Wasn't this person immoral? The students from number 1 high school looked at this ridiculously difficult paper and suddenly felt self-doubt. Their mentality was broken by Bei Yunj. Who told you to speak in the examination hall and affect others? The teacher from number 1 high school was so angry that his face was distorted. Bei Yunj said in a sincere tone, "I'm sorry, teacher. I thought everyone had finished." After saying that, Bei Yunj suddenly stood up and said slowly, "Teacher, I'm handing in my paper." The expressions of the number 1 high school students were about to crack. She handed in her paper in less than 20 minutes. Bei Yunj didn't like this kind of exam. To her, this was like asking a high school student to do first-grade questions. It's not time yet. Who told you to hand in your paper in advance? The teacher from number 1 high school said immediately. Then what should I do? I have bad habits since I was young and I like to talk to myself. Bei Yunj glanced at everyone present with a smile. The students from No. 1 high school suddenly had a bad feeling about this. For the first time they wanted to shout for help because of a person's gaze. Go lie on the table and sleep. You're not allowed to speak. The invigilator's face was ashen, and he was so angry that he almost blacked out. What kind of students did Hongda recruit? Wouldn't this kind of student blow up the school? However, although Bei Yunj was seriously sleeping, the people around her were more or less having a mental breakdown as they looked at her. So much so that after the exam, no one present had a pleasant expression. She must have been sent by Hongda to mess with them, right? After 2 days all the exams were over. The students in the examination hall 29 also heaved a sigh of relief. They finally didn't have to see this god of plague from Hongda anymore. This is the real god of plague. She didn't do well in the exam and even caused the entire examination hall to have a mental breakdown. End of this chapter. Chapter 10-11. The students from number 1 high school were furious and gritted their teeth in hatred. You don't say. Do you know who Hongda's Bei Yunj is on good terms with? Song Yao. Another girl sneered as she ground her nails. I don't know if it was discussed, but Song Yao didn't come for the exam today. Ha, she's obviously an ingrate. Even if there's no Song Yao, there's still Zhou Han. How can a bunch of useless people from Hongda compare to us? The students in the class mocked. Hongda. What's wrong with you? Bei Yunj, are you a humanoid missile? You'll blow up wherever you go. The principal looked at her in disbelief. You've been in number 1 high school for 2 days and number 1 high school has called our school more than in the past 2 years. Bei Yunj was speechless. Did you call me over to punish me or criticize me? Bei Yunj asked slowly. The principal took a deep breath and glared at Bei Yunj. Don't do it again. Bei Yunj looked at the principal in surprise and replied with a smile. Okay, then I'll leave school. Bei Yunj, even if you're talented, you can't afford to waste it. Find a tutor and make up for your high school knowledge. Bei Yunj continued to brush him off. Okay, principal. The principal was speechless. If this fellow stayed in school any longer, he would explode. However, after Bei Yunj left, the form teacher of year 3 hurried over. Principal, I've asked around. The mathematics results of the 2 examination halls are out. The highest score in our school is still Leia with 125 points. But Zhou Han with 130 points. What? The principal was also stunned. The craftiness of this exam was already at its peak. Zhou Han from number 1 high school actually scored so high. But principal, Leia is a contestant in the Physics World Championship. I heard that Leia's physics score is above 90. Johan only scored 82 points. The principal heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there's still Leia. Then, the principal thought for a moment. However, their scores are too close. I wonder what the final result will be. On this day, the teachers of the two schools were studying the highest score in the first examination hall. The atmosphere was soul-stirring, but no one cared about the students in the other examination halls. So much so that the teachers marking the papers were bored to death. When they reached the last paper, they almost spat out their tea. What's the situation? The student in examination hall 29 solved the last question of physics? Teacher Chin was in charge of correcting the last two questions, but there were only a handful of people who got it right. There was not a single person who got it all right. The test paper in his hand was actually the first one that was completely correct. Teacher Chin came to his senses and flipped the paper forward. When the paper reached her hands, she was already at the last question. But this examinee actually got all the answers right. Was this world a fantasy? Before Mr. Chen could react, the voice of Mr. Zhang, who was marking the math papers, suddenly came from the door. Old Chen, did you see anything wrong with the physics paper in examination hall 29? Mr. Chen subconsciously pointed at the paper in his hand, his voice trembling unnaturally. This is a perfect score paper. Teacher Zhang walked in and asked tentatively, is it examinee number 27? Mr. Chen looked down. Yes. But when he reacted, he was shocked. How did you know? Mr. Chen looked up and met Teacher Zhang's eyes. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Examinee number 27 scored full marks for the mathematics paper. End of chapter. Chapter 10-12. The moment he finished speaking, the atmosphere was dead silent for a long time. This standard? She might be the top scholar of the college entrance examination this year. Let's go and talk to them. Teacher Chin walked out excitedly, but was pulled back by Teacher Zhang. Old Zhang, with your qualifications, you should be here to help Yun University check the papers, right? Teacher Chin glared at him. Aren't you here to understand the situation for Beichuan? In the past few years, the competition between the top universities in the country was still intense. Who didn't want to be the first to gain the upper hand? Actually, we have orders from above. This examinee's score. We can suppress it first. Teacher Zhang hugged Teacher Chen's shoulders and discussed, let's find out about her results in other subjects from Beichuan and Yun University first. If she's really the top scholar, we'll compete fairly. How about that? Teacher Chen was stunned. Then the other universities. Old Chen, have you forgotten how many good seedlings were secretly stolen from your Yun University last year? The moment Teacher Zhang said this, Teacher Chen was furious. He reached out and slapped his head. You immoral people still have the cheek to say that? Isn't it Beichuan who did it the most? In the end, on the day the results of the joint examination of the 9 schools were released, Class 7. Leia was surrounded by many classmates with envious faces. Leia, I heard. Johan next door scored 5 points higher than you in mathematics, and you scored 8 points higher than him in physics. But in foreign languages, you scored 13 points higher than Johan. The classmate said excitedly, Johan was completely destroyed. Song Yao smirked and said humbly, this joint examination is too difficult. I might not even get 600 points. Come on. Every time you say you don't have 600 points, you end up with 700 points. It's really difficult this time. Song Yao looked helpless. However, when the teacher arrived, the highest score of Class 7 was announced. It was Leia. She had a total score of 641 points. And the second place in the first examination hall had a score of 5 points. Many people could not help but discuss fervently. Leia and Johan were fighting like gods. However, in this joint examination, if Leia could get nearly 650 points, Johan would probably have to settle for second place. After the second period ended, Leia was still asking about Bei Yunja's score. She heard a classmate sigh. The highest score of Class 1 seems to be Chu Zhixing, right? 589 points. But he didn't even pass the foreign language test, yet he still got such a high score. He's also a dark horse. Really? This time Bei Yunj came to take the exam. I thought it was her. Leia smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. Compared to Johan, she did not want to see Bei Yunj get a high score. She's not even in the top 3. It's not like you don't know how long she hasn't been in class. Even if you participate in the college entrance examination, You will only be at the level of cannon fodder. Leia smiled without saying anything. Suddenly, someone rushed in from the door. Oh, not good. I heard that the neighboring Zhou got 660 points. After saying this, Leia's expression changed and the pen in her hand almost broke. 660? This was too high. How is that possible? Everyone gasped, but seeing Leia's dark face, they did not dare to say anything. At this moment, in the conference hall, the homeroom teachers who knew about Zhou results were also very quiet. Was Yunqing number 1 middle school preparing to make a comeback? Look, did Hengde perform to its full potential in this exam? The form teachers were being reprimanded. End of chapter. Chapter 10-13. There's a difference of more than 10 points between our first place and theirs. The principal pointed at these form teachers. Hengde's reputation has been ruined in my hands. Principal, let's calm down. A form teacher hurriedly said, Leia isn't the only one in class 7. This Qin Youjiao is still in our nation. The form teacher of class 7 immediately understood. Yes, Youjiao didn't fall behind in her studies overseas. The last time I sent her a paper, she scored even higher than Leia. Hearing this, the principal calmed down a little. You mean Qin Youjiao's results didn't drop? This was also very surprising to the principal. That's right. Besides, Qin Youjiao even has policy bonus points when she comes back. How can she not compare to Zhou next door? The form teacher of class 7 changed the topic and glanced at Teacher Wen, mocking him sarcastically. Sigh, this is also taking leave, but good students will never disappoint. Oh right, Teacher Wen, didn't you say that Bei Yunj could get first? How much did she score? Teacher Wen glanced at her. I was in class for the first 2 periods and didn't check the scores. The form teacher of class 7 laughed and said thought-provokingly, then you have to tell us after you're done. Maybe she's the first of the 9 schools? The rest of the people present had already asked about class 1's results and knew that the form teacher of class 7 was deliberately finding trouble. Alright. The principal took a deep breath. There's still the 9 schools exchange later. It's a number 1 high school. Come with me. The meeting room was exceptionally silent. They had lost too badly this time. Not only did they lose to number 1 high school next door, they even had to go to number 1 high school to listen to them show off. Teacher Wen returned to class 1. The rankings had already been printed out. Bei Yunj had also returned to Hengde because of the strange call last night. Reporting. Before Teacher Wen could speak, he heard a voice at the door. Why are you back? Bei Yunj was perplexed. I received 2 strange calls last night. They asked me to report to Yunde Beichuan. Bei Yunj probed, was I betrayed by the school? Lu Yuanxi was shocked. There's such a scam call? Bei Yunj was speechless. It's probably a scam call. I'll report it to the school after class. After Teacher Wen finished speaking, he gestured for Bei Yunj to return to her seat. Come in and listen to the results of this exam. When Bei Yunj heard this, she subconsciously walked inside. But as soon as he sat down, he was pulled by Lu Yuanxi. What happened to your results? What do you mean what happened? Bei Yunj turned to look at him. The first place is Brother Chu and the second place is Hiyu. I'm already in 5th place and you're not even in the top 10. Lu Yuanxi said bitterly, you'd better come back early so we can go to class together. Listen to Yen. Bei Yunj immediately snatched the ranking list from the front desk. She couldn't believe that she could get this question wrong. But in the end, the first place really wasn't hers. But not long after, Bei Yunj suddenly looked up and interrupted Mr. Wen. Mr. Wen, where did my grades go? What results? Where did they go? All the results are out. It's impossible that yours isn't. After Teacher Wen finished speaking, he subconsciously asked, your results aren't on the list. The class was very quiet. Then the ranking list in Bei Yunj's hands was snatched away by someone else. Damn, why doesn't Master Pei have any results? When Teacher Wen heard this, he also checked the results. In the end, Bei Yunj's results really weren't there. Teacher Wen couldn't help but ask, did you skip the exam? End of chapter. Chapter 10-14. Bei Yunj was speechless. Chu Zhixing immediately explained, Teacher, that's impossible. Every time Yunj goes, number 1 high school will call the principal's office. Bei Yunj was speechless. Bei Yunj, tell me honestly. Did you write the paper seriously? Teacher Wen had also heard that Bei Yunj was looking for trouble in the examination hall. Number 1 high school was just short of banning Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj thought for a moment. I think so. Teacher Wen's eyelid twitched. This answer made him too ashamed to ask the principal. At the 9 schools exchange. Other than the form teacher and principal, Leia also went, but her expression was still not too good. She only felt better after being comforted by the principal. Although they did not surpass Johan this time, they were still much better than Bei Yunj. However, the moment the principal and the form teachers entered number 1 high school, the people from number 1 high school did not hesitate to show off. Hongda didn't perform well this time, did they? They let our number 1 high school take the lead again. The principal of number 1 high school could not hide the pride in his tone. The principal of Hongda only gave a fake smile. Number 1 high school has taught well. Actually, we didn't teach much. The main thing is that the students are obedient and know how to study hard. The principal of number 1 high school kept instilling his unique teaching philosophy into the principal of Hongda. However, after the 9 school teams arrived, the 9 principals of Hongda number 1 high school were waiting for the top schools in the joint examination. After all, the joint examination of the 9 schools would determine the guaranteed spots for each school. However, no one expected the principal of Beichuan University to come. Before this, they had never seen this person come personally. The principal of number 1 high school immediately stood up and smiled like a flower. Principal Tan, why are you here personally? The other principals knew that number 1 high school was in the limelight this time, and these high schools probably wanted to get more people from number 1 high school. Just as expected. The principal of Beichuan shook hands with the principal of number 1 high school. Of course, it's for our country's good seedlings. These students are better than the other in your hands. The principal of number 1 high school pretended to be humble, but he was grinning from ear to ear. Not at all. It's the student's talent. However, just as the Hongda principal was about to roll his eyes, the Beichuan principal suddenly turned to look at him. Headmaster Jian, you really surprise me every year. How did you nurture the number 1 student in your school? Aren't you going to share your experience? After saying this, everyone was stunned. Wait a minute, wasn't the first place of the 9 schools from number 1 high school? How could Beichuan's headmaster not know about this? The first high school's principal's expression instantly turned ugly. He could only look at the Hongda principal with a fake smile. Hongda's principal paused. Who are you talking about? The Beichuan principal was stunned for a moment before he patted the Hongda principal's shoulder and teased, Old Jian, you're too pretentious. After so many years, this is the first time I've met someone who scored full marks in all the subjects. You still don't know which student did it? Hongda's principal. Was this a student from their school? What? The first high school's principal's face turned pale, and he almost couldn't stand still. Wait, you really don't know? Don't you know the standards of the students in your school? Beichuan's principal asked suspiciously. But suddenly, Teacher Wen suddenly probed carefully, is her surname Bei? Yes. This student should be called Bei Yunj, right? Her future is limitless. End of this chapter. Chapter 10-15. This was the first time he had called a student in so many years. In the end, he was blacklisted? The principal of Hongda hesitated. Our school, first place? Who are you talking about? He didn't believe that Leia would have the guts to blacklist the principal of Yun University. However, the principal of Beichuan turned around and asked, You were blacklisted too? It was a sudden feeling of mutual appreciation. The principal of Yun University's eyelids twitched. There was actually more than one. The high school principals were all silent. The form teachers of Hongda were also thinking. This shouldn't be a student from their class. Only Teacher Wen had a bad feeling about this, but not long after. The principal of Beichuan was also very curious. This is the first time in so many years that I've met someone who scored full marks in all subjects. You still don't know which student did it? The principal of Hongda was speechless. Full marks in all subjects? Was this a student from their school? Why didn't he know? What? The principal of number 1 high school turned pale and almost blacked out. He had finally nurtured Zhou Han, who scored 660 points. Hongda had given him a full marks in all subjects. Wait a minute, you really don't know? You don't know the standards of the students in your school? The principal of Yun University couldn't help but ask. But suddenly, the principal of Hongda was caught off guard and Teacher Wen probed carefully, is her surname Bei? The principal and form teachers of Hongda were speechless. Yes. This student should be called Bei Yunj, right? The principal of Yun University was suddenly excited. The principal and form teachers of Hongda were confused. The form teacher of Class 1's smile froze. How was this possible? Bei Yunj scored full marks in all subjects. Not only the form teacher of Class 1, even Lei Ye's pupils constricted as she stared at the principals instinctively. How could Bei Yunj score full marks? But I didn't see Bei Yunj's score. Teacher Wen muttered again. The principal of Yun University said calmly. Principal Tan said that the score was too high and he wanted to suppress it first to see if there was a mistake. Everyone was speechless. What mistake? He probably wanted to suppress the score and hook up with the students first so that other schools wouldn't intercept. Not long after, there was really a principal from another high school who asked curiously, Principal Jian, how did you recruit a student who scored full marks in all subjects? Hongda's principal's heart was about to crack. How should he answer this question? How did he manage to recruit them? Bei Yunj's crazy brothers donated a building to her? The principals and teachers of Hongda weren't the only ones who had a mental breakdown. The faces of the teachers and vice principals who had been tortured by Bei Yunj were even more twisted. This Bei Yunj again. She casually took a test and got full marks for all the subjects. In the end, all the students in exam hall 29 were annihilated by her. Suddenly, a teacher from number 1 high school sneered as if he had caught Hongda's weakness. I heard from Bei Yunj that she had reviewed all the questions for the joint examination at school. I don't know when Hongda's teachers became so good at guessing questions. It was obvious that Hongda was helping Bei Yunj cheat. But at this moment, a homeroom teacher from Hongda said coldly, What kind of joke is this? Bei Yunj didn't come to class this semester. How could she have guessed the questions? Half of Teacher Wen's hair fell out because of her. The teachers from number 1 high school were speechless. Teacher Wen was speechless. Hongda's principal was speechless. He had a feeling that Hongda was the one who picked up the scraps this time. P.S. The previous chapter has been changed a little. Babies, you can refresh and read it again. Master Pei is from class 7. Old Su has mixed it up. Change it tomorrow. Did our little friend cast a monthly vote? Pinch face. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:16. The expression of the number 1 high school teacher twitched as he instantly understood why Bei Yunj said that. She was deliberately creating pressure for the other students. The principal of number 1 high school regained his senses and could not help but say with a fake smile, She doesn't even attend classes. It seems like Hongda still needs to discipline such a student. Hearing this, the principal of Hongda refused to admit defeat. When he regained his senses, he smiled at him. Since the principal of number 1 high school is so concerned, why don't you go to the Computing Institute personally and ask for her for Hongda? With that said, the principals were stunned and doubted their ears. Computing Institute? The principal of Yun University asked instinctively. Bei Yunj was from the Computing Institute. I heard from Professor C that old Mr. Zhong likes Yunj a lot, so... The principal of Hongda hesitated, but he did not hide the pride on his face. Elder Zhong likes student Pei? The principal of Yun University was a little incoherent. Then student Pei is a member of the Computing Institute? Hearing this, the eyes of the other principals turned red. This was the Computing Institute, the top computing technology institute in the country. It was said that Yun University's postgraduate students might not even be recruited, but Elder Zhong only took a fancy to a high school student. I'm not sure about that. It's just that Professor C mentioned it a few times. Even if she hasn't entered the institute yet, she has to enter when she goes to university in the future. The principal of Hongda said with a smile. In the past, old Mr. Zhong came to Hongda and wanted Yunj to go to the institute for an internship, but he was rejected. Young people more or less have a temper. The eyelids of the others twitched. Her temper was too bad. She actually rejected the institute. When the principals of Beichuan and Yun University heard this, they suddenly felt that it was reasonable for them to be blacklisted. Student Pei's form teacher should have her number too, right? Can I trouble the form teacher to help contact student Pei? With that said, the principal of Hongda looked at Teacher Wen. Teacher Wen replied with a fake smile. No problem. Then, indeed. The moment the form teacher called, the other party picked up very quickly. Teacher Wen? Her lazy voice rang out. Why Yunj? Under everyone's gaze, Teacher Wen felt a lot of pressure. Did someone call you today? The other party said slowly. Didn't you say it's a fraud gang? They're all blacklisted. Teacher Wen was speechless. He should not have turned on the speaker. Instantly, the atmosphere in the arena was dead silent. Everyone immediately understood what was going on. The gazes of the two principals also fell on Teacher Wen. Those two are really the principals of Beichuan University and Yun University. Mr. Wen took a deep breath. Because you scored full marks in all subjects, so I want to talk to you. After saying this, everyone thought that Bei Yunj would be very excited. Unexpectedly, she suddenly asked, "So, my score was suppressed by them?" The principal of Yun University was speechless. Beichuan's principal, just as the principals of the other high schools were thinking that this student didn't know what was good for him, a familiar roar could be heard. Chat. What was there to talk about? Hang up immediately. Tell them to go as far as they can. How dare you lower the score of the person I'm in? As soon as he finished speaking, Beichuan's and Yun University's principals' hearts skipped a beat. They immediately recognized the voice. Someone asked uncertainly, Is this Elder Zhong? Chapter 10:17. The people at the side looked at the person who asked the question as if they were looking at a fool. Other than Mr. Zhong Xinglin, who would dare to shout at the principals of two top schools. At this moment, the two principals were also stunned by Zhong Xinglin's shout. After coming back to his senses, the Beichuan principal's scalp went numb. Teacher Zhong, so it's you? The Beichuan principal laughed dryly, feeling even more terrified. After all, the Beichuan principal was also the one whose thesis had been blocked by Elder Zhong. Zhong Xinglin smiled indifferently. Principal Tan, what can I do for you? The Beichuan principal was speechless. He was really angry. Everyone could tell that this student of Hengda held a very high position in Zhong Xinglin's heart. Oh, is it because Gur blocked the two principals? Then I'll apologize to you on behalf of my Gur? Zhong Xinglin suddenly said leisurely. The Beichuan principal broke out in cold sweat. No, there's no need, teacher. Similarly, the Yun University principal did not dare to breathe loudly and silently lowered his presence. However, the next moment. Eat. You're still eating. You usually talk a lot of nonsense, but now you're pretending to be autistic, right? Zhong Xinglin used his chopsticks to knock the tripe that Bai Mingzhang had just picked up back into the pot. Bai Mingzhang's hand stopped. This old thing usually only ate clear soup when eating hot pot. Why did it seem like he was on fire every day? Why was he so angry? Bai Mingzhang glanced at Zhong Xinglin bitterly and said to Bei Yunj, Give me the phone. I'll say it. However, everyone on the other end of the phone was stunned. Why did this voice sound like Mr. Bai Mingzhang's voice? Xiaowen, give the phone to Principal Xiang. I have a call to talk to him. Teacher Wen's smile froze. He did not expect to be so lucky in this life to be called Xiaowen by Elder Bai. However, when the principal of Yun University heard this, two words appeared in his mind. It's over. He knew that he would definitely be reprimanded this time. Elder Bai, it's me. After the principal of Yun University took the phone, he walked to a corner and listened to the lecture seriously. As for the others, when they saw that Beichuan's principal was still on the phone explaining to Zhong Xinglin, Yun University's principal was also reprimanded until he wilted. His eyes widened. Was this a dream? Wasn't the direction of this matter a little too mysterious? Not long after, everyone started to think about the same thing. What was the background of this student who scored full marks in all subjects? Where did all these big shots in the academic circle come from? In the end, although Bai Mingzhang didn't harshly reprimand the principal, he made it clear that Yun University didn't need such a competitive method. Principal Xiang was personally groomed by Bai Mingzhang to be his successor. When he heard Bai Mingzhang's words, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. After hanging up the phone, the principals of Beichuan and Yun University both apologized to the principal of Hengda. This reversal made everyone else fall silent. They couldn't help but feel envious. Why was Hengda so lucky every time? This was full marks for all subjects. 20 years ago, there was also a male examinee who was 2 points short of full marks in the college entrance examination. However, the joint examination of the 9 schools in layman's terms was a guaranteed entry exam. In terms of the difficulty of the questions, it was even more difficult than the college entrance examination. However, even so, this person was able to get full marks for all subjects. The exchange meeting began. The first lieutenant colonel, who was originally smug, fell silent. They had originally agreed to give a speech for the first place in the joint examination, but now no one dared to call Bei Yunj. They were afraid that the person who answered the phone would be Zhong Xinglin or Bai Mingzhang. Chapter 10:18. The principal of Hongda was also very passive. Historically, the school that had brought out the first place of the 9 schools would share their teaching experience. However, this first place of the 9 schools seemed to have nothing to do with the school. Therefore, halfway through his speech, when the principal of Hongda mentioned the first place of the 9 schools, the atmosphere was awkward. Below the stage, Leia clenched her fists tightly. Her face was dark as she bit her lip. How could this be? How could Bei Yunj do so well? Didn't she not come to class? Could it be that she secretly revised elsewhere? After the exchange meeting ended, the principal of Beichuan University suddenly pulled the principal of Yun University. He asked, "Old Xiang, is this Bei Yunj the one from the Qin family?" The principal of Yun University was stunned. What Qin family? The eldest daughter of the Qin family. Before she was 17 years old, Director Lin Lanjun personally raised her. When the principal of Beichuan University mentioned it, the principal of Yun University suddenly remembered that there was such a thing. At that time, Yun University had caused quite a commotion. It's really her? The principal of Yun University widened his eyes. But didn't they say that the eldest daughter of the Qin family doesn't have any learning talent? If this was called not talented, then others were brainless? How could you not know about Director Lin's daughter? The principal of Beichuan University wanted to strangle him to death. You're still talking about me? Bei Yunj is at the Computing Institute. You used to be Elder Zhong's favorite student. How could you not know anything? The two of them pushed the blame to each other. In the afternoon, after the school went back, they all changed their strategy for the college entrance examination. Instead of fighting for first place, they only fought for second place. There was no hope for this year's college entrance examination top scorer. Not long after, the news that the real first place was a Hongda student spread. First place, full marks for all subjects, directly crushing all the top students of the 9 schools, and the second place was a full 90 points lower than the first place. The people who were originally shouting that the students of Hongda next door were all trash in number 1 high school's Tieba also silently deleted the post. Where the hell did this person pop out from? Full marks for all subjects. Was this something a human would do? The next day, Bei Yunj was curled up on the sofa with an open book on her face. On the table was the fruit that Aunt Meow had just cut. Suddenly her phone rang. What's wrong? Bei Yunj asked lazily after she answered the call. Master Pei, not bad. You scored full marks in all subjects. This result really makes our old one proud. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up, she said uninterestedly. No. Lu Yuanxi immediately interrupted and continued, this time in order to celebrate your first place, I, Fatty Chu, and Yao Yao are going to the amusement park with you. I heard that there's a haunted house that's especially exciting. Also, it's said to be very high-tech. Bei Yunj. I'm not going. Suddenly, Song Yao interrupted and asked, Yunj, don't you like it? Before Bei Yunj could answer, she heard Lu Yuanxi ask in shock. Master Pei, are you afraid of ghosts? Bei Yunj. Yunj, then we. Before Song Yao could finish speaking, Bei Yunj snorted. Send me the address. No need, we're right outside your house. Lu Yuanxi smiled. Bei Yunj, at noon. Bei Yunj sat beside Song Yao and said casually, what's so fun about a haunted house? I heard that many of them are reenactments of scenes from some horror movie. Besides, this movie is based on a real incident. Some time ago, someone even said that there were non-staff members inside. Chu Zhixing said mysteriously. Chapter 10:19. Bei Yunj glanced at Chu Zhixing faintly. Chu Zhixing was speechless. Did he say something wrong? Let's go, fatty. Let's go buy tickets. With that said, Lu Yuanxi started playing with Chu Zhixing. It attracted the attention of many girls. Bei Yunj pressed down the brim of his hat and the tip of his shoes tapped the ground from time to time. His expression was still lazy. Song Yao pretended not to see Bei Yunj's wandering eyes, but the corners of her lips could not help but curl up. After Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing returned, the 4 of them lined up to enter the haunted house. The good-looking quartet also attracted a lot of attention. But in the next moment, Bei Yunj looked up and saw the real NPC outside the field right in front of her. She almost turned around and left. Yunj, are you all right? Song Yao asked. This was originally to let Bei Yunj relax. However, she did not expect that Bei Yunj did not seem to like haunted houses. Let's go in. Bei Yunj felt Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing's gazes from the front and licked his lips. The interior of the haunted house was dark. Under the eerie atmosphere, The dark green light floating in the air was inexplicably terrifying. Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing could not help but swallow. Little Chu, little Lu. At this moment, Bei Yunji's lazy voice made them feel extremely at ease. Don't be afraid, I'm here. But in the next moment, before Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing could feel touched, they were caught off guard and pushed to the front. Bei Yunji, can't you learn how to be a human? The high technology mentioned in the promotional slogan was true. Bei Yunji and the other two had just walked forward when they realized that there was a ship in front of them. Then Lu Yuanxi had just run over when his heart almost exploded from fright. A pair of pale hands suddenly appeared at the edge of the ship. The first NPC appeared. The NPC was a mermaid with a rotten body. One of her eyeballs was about to fall out and there was a strange and gloomy smile on her face. From their line of sight, there was a projection under the ship. This was the surging black sea designed by the device, and below the NPC's waist was a huge dark blue fish tail. In fact, it was even bigger than the ship that the four of them were on. He could hear the waves and the strange and shrill cries of birds. It's really high-tech. Song Yao sighed. Bei Yunji didn't look too good. Was technology meant for them to use? In the end, Bei Yunji was dragged onto the boat. Along the way, the mermaid NPC didn't say a word. She only stared at Bei Yunji from time to time with a scary smile on her face. Bei Yunji, look over there. Chu Zhixing suddenly shouted. Bei Yunji turned around and saw the bloody words at the mouth of the shore. In the resentment spiritual field, the living will not return. At this moment, Bei Yunji suddenly felt that even the mermaid NPCs had delicate features. Sister, can I not get off the boat? Bei Yunji discussed it with her seriously. The mermaid NPC was speechless. This was the first time he had encountered such an unreasonable request. In the end, Bei Yunji was forced to get off the boat. Along the way, only Song Yao was calm. When she saw the NPC, she even touched his head. The NPC was so embarrassed that he went to scare Bei Yunji. After a few rounds, there was only one thought in Bei Yunji's mind. Leave this damn place quickly. However, at the last fork there were 4 forks in the road. Hospital, cinema, castle, cemetery. The NPC reminded them that the 4 of them had to split up at least once before they could leave with clues. Only a true warrior would choose the last path. Master Pei, you can choose first. Chu Zhixing looked at Bei Yunji. P.S. Next, Master Pei will perform what it means to be unlucky. The haunted house will start an important plot line. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:20. Bei Yunji looked at Song Yao. Tian, which one do you want to choose? Song Yao frowned and said hesitantly, there might be too many people in the cemetery. Let's go to the hospital. Bei Yunji was speechless. Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing were speechless. This might be the only good young man present who believed in science and opposed superstition. Master Pei, we believe in science. Be brave. Lu Yuanxi stuffed the cemetery into Bei Yunji's hands. Bei Yunji was speechless. A few minutes later, Chu Zhixing took the castle, and Lu Yuanxi took the cemetery. Lu Yuanxi watched as Bei Yunji lazily put the cinema tickets he had snatched from him into his pocket and walked towards the fork in the road. According to Bei Yunji's sixth sense, the cinema should be the safest. At most, an NPC would crawl out from behind the projection screen. Or, if the entire cinema was filled with NPCs, it would be quite lively. With this thought in mind, Bei Yunji walked in slowly. However, the 2 NPCs leading the way looked at Bei Yunji with a sigh. This young lady is really ruthless to herself. She actually dared to choose the home ground restoration. There were 4 forks in the cinema. Only one of them was the main storyline and the others were all side routes. The restoration of the main storyline scene would carry out the terrifying essence of this cinema. Unfortunately, this was the case. The main storyline was the cinema, in Bei Yunji's hands. She's really strong. I've been here for 2 months and I don't want to go back to the main storyline scene. This is 2F** King suffocating. At the thought of this cinema, the 2 NPCs could not help but feel their scalps turn numb. Not long after, Bei Yunji, who had pushed open the door of the cinema, also realized that something was wrong. The cinema was dark and empty, but a black and white movie was playing on the large screen. It was like the most realistic documentary. The video was even stuck on the white screen, causing the lights in the cinema to flicker. Bei Yunji was speechless. Why was the atmosphere no better than the cemetery? Bei Yunji glanced at the clue and saw that she had to watch the movie for 10 minutes, so she could only choose a seat in the middle of the room and sit down. However, not long after, as the plot of the movie changed, the most terrifying scene in the movie appeared. The only grandson of the crazy, disfigured old woman was killed by the villagers on purpose. Every night, she would use her hoarse and unpleasant voice to sing songs to coax the children, but the children in the village were so scared that they didn't dare to sleep. In the end, the villagers couldn't take it anymore and decided to seal the door of the old lady's house and let her fend for herself. He didn't want the little girls in the village to know about this. She couldn't stop the adults, so she could only secretly pry open the old granny's wooden wall at night, hoping to save the old granny. She didn't expect that one day, when the little girl had just knocked out a small hole and was delivering food to the old lady, the old woman didn't take it. Instead, she gave her a cruel smile and suddenly swung the iron hoe at her. A faint trace of blood appeared on the girl's face, and she retreated in fear. Then, she saw with her own eyes that the old woman in front of her had abandoned her, stood on a stool, and hanged herself. She struggled with all her might, and her eyes became bloodshot. Finally, she gave her a strange smile. This scene happened to be directed at Bai Yunsh. She saw with her own eyes that the old woman stopped breathing. The girl in the movie was so scared that she burst into tears. Bai Yunsh, who was watching the same scene, turned pale. A memory fragment in her mind overlapped with the scene in front of her. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared on the screen of the movie. Chapter 10:21. It was a person struggling with all her might, tugging at the rope around her neck. She was behind Bai Yunsh. Hanging in front of the projection equipment in the theater, the atmosphere was oppressive, helpless, and desperate. However, at this moment, Bai Yunsh's eyes were red as she sat stiffly on the chair. In her mind were countless memories that had torn her personality apart. Yunsh. Song Yao called Bai Yunsh a few times. It was only when she heard the last word that Bai Yunsh looked up instinctively. However, this was Song Yao's first time seeing Bai Yunsh have such a gaze. Emptiness, helplessness, and a trace of cold vigilance and hostility. It was as if she had been abandoned. Song Yao pursed her lips and found that the special effects here were much scarier than what she had seen just now. Yunsh, it's all fake. Song Yao's eyes were beautiful as she reached out to touch her head instinctively and coaxed her gently. Bai Yunsh's eyelashes fluttered. When she saw that it was Song Yao, her expression was calm, but her eyes were a little dry. Then, before Song Yao could say anything, the person sitting in the seat suddenly reached out and hugged Song Yao's waist. Her voice was imperceptibly hoarse. Why did you only come to find me now? Song Yao had seen Bai Yunsh in high spirits countless times, so when she suddenly saw this person in front of her, her throat felt inexplicably choked. Song Yao explained softly, the elevator in the hospital is really broken. I can only take the fire stairs down. Yunsh, don't you want me to send you? Song Yao grabbed Bai Yunsh's hand and wrinkled her nose. She was a little worried. With Bai Yunsh's state just now, Song Yao did not want to see it again in her life. No need. I still have something on. Go back early. Bai Yunsh lowered the brim of her hat and her voice sounded the same as usual. She only knocked her head lazily. What can Master Pei do? Go back early. With that said, Lu Yuanxi hesitated for a moment. Song Yao, you're going back so late. Should I send you? Song Yao was the only one who was treated like a girl. Then help me send Tian Tian back. I'll get going first. Bai Yunsh held her phone and waved at them. Then he walked toward the intersection not far away. Song Yao looked at Bai Yunsh's back and frowned instinctively. What's wrong? Is Master Pei crying inside? Lu Yuanxi asked Song Yao excitedly. Song Yao shook her head and muttered, It's just very strange. What's strange? Chu Zhixing asked. After Song Yao regained her senses, she did not say anything and only said, I'm going back too. I don't need you to send me off. With that said, Song Yao unconsciously followed behind Bai Yunsh, afraid that something would happen to Bai Yunsh on the way. At the subway station, Bai Yunsh looked distracted and did not notice Song Yao not far away. Until an hour later, Song Yao saw Bai Yunsh arrive home with her own eyes before she turned and left. 3 days in a row. Bai Yunsh had been writing reports all night and only rested for 2 to 3 hours during the day. On the 4th day, Bai Yunsh returned to the computing institute. Inside, a chubby intern was telling dirty jokes to girls. When he saw Bai Yunsh's red eyes, he teased, Oh, Master Pei, did you indulge too much? Then, Bai Yunsh, who was about to leave, suddenly turned around, raised her leg and kicked him in the butt. Bai Yunsh had his hands in his pockets and a document report under his forearm. He glanced sideways and his casual appearance made him look even more difficult to deal with. You have a lot to do? The others could clearly feel that Bei Yunji's aura today was "don't provoke me." End of chapter. Chapter 1022. The fat intern had always been unrestrained and liked to joke too much. However, he did not expect someone to make a move in the institute. When the teaching staff saw this scene, they were also stunned. Pei, manage your intern well. Bei Yunji glanced at him, restrained her aura, and turned to leave. The other girls cheered in their hearts. This damn fatty deserved to be beaten. He liked to make disgusting jokes every day and was so confident. F***C. Teacher, what kind of background does this woman have? She's too damn arrogant. Before the fat intern could finish speaking, he was stopped by the teaching staff. Shut up. Are you tired of living? How dare you challenge her? In the entire institute, who would dare to make Bei Yunji unhappy? The fat intern was stunned. He did not expect the teaching staff to reprimand him like this because of Bei Yunji. However, Bei Yunji was clearly a few years younger than him. The fat intern lowered his head. No one saw the indignation in his eyes. What's wrong with you? I heard that you hit an intern the moment you came in. Bei Yunji looked at the project book and started to prepare for the experiment. She said leisurely, I overdid it. Si Qingyan was speechless. Then, isn't your project progressing too quickly? Won't your brain be damaged if you use it like this? Si Qingyan could not help but touch Bei Yunji's enviable head. However, the next moment he was shocked by the unreal temperature. Damn, it's so hot. Bei Yunji glanced at him. If there's nothing else, get out. Bei Yunji, have you gone crazy these few days? You're running a high fever and you're still working on the project. Do you think it's fine even if your brain is damaged? Si Qingyan asked in disbelief. It won't be damaged. Bei Yunji did not even look up. Si Qingyan looked at her for a while and knew that it was useless to persuade her, so he simply called in front of Bei Yunji. Hello, old master. Do you know how high your precious heir's fever is now? You still. Suddenly, Bei Yunji snatched Si Qingyan's phone. Are you looking for trouble with me? Master Pei, you're too irritable now. You're even scarier than the first time I saw you. Hearing this, Bei Yunji's eyes flickered. She returned the phone to him and said lightly, sorry. Although Si Qingyan felt that Bei Yunji's temper was definitely not good, it was as if she had taken gunpowder today. Si Qingyan said, I'll take you to the hospital. Bei Yunji hesitated. Can't we find a private doctor? Si Qingyan was speechless. He was really born with a silver spoon in his mouth. At the hospital, Bei Yunji looked at Si Qingyan beside her. Brother Yen, is the new medicine not ready yet? Si Qingyan was stunned. Recently I think I need it. Bei Yunji slowly adjusted his cuffs. Si Qingyan was silent for a moment. Actually, Dr. Cui has also developed. Bei Yunji thought for a moment. Brother Yen, if you don't have any new drugs, can you get me some sleeping pills? Bei Yunji was a typical good-looking person who was easily forgiven for all the bad things she had done. Especially now that she looked sickly, her skin was sickly pale, and her black hair was hanging down softly. Her phoenix eyes, which were usually lazy, were filled with an unruly and aggressive aura when she raised the tip of her tail. But now she was just looking at him quietly. It gave people the illusion that she was obedient and their hearts softened. Si Qingyan was speechless. Fortunately, this guy never pretended to be obedient and focused on scientific research. He did not engage in relationships. Otherwise, people would seek revenge every day in the institute. End of chapter. Chapter 1023. Si Qingyan rubbed the hair at the back of his head in frustration. If I give you any medicine, old master will strangle me to death personally. The medicine Bei Yunji used was tested by the higher-ups and confirmed to be safe. However, this was the first time Si Qingyan had seen Bei Yunji's eyes so red and her lazy expression had a hint of indifference. Then forget it. Before Bei Yunji could finish speaking, Si Qingyan turned around and left quickly. When he returned, Si Qingyan threw the medicine in his hand into Bei Yunji's arms. I asked my friend to prescribe it for you. You're not allergic, are you? Bei Yunji looked at the ingredients and smiled lazily. No thank you, Brother Yen. Si Qingyan was speechless. Alright, he regretted it after doing this. Don't worry, I'll say that I bought it. Bei Yunji put the medicine back into her pocket. Si Qingyan hesitated. Try not to eat it. Compared to the old master, he was more afraid that something would really happen to Bei Yunji. In the wee hours of the morning, after tossing and turning, Bei Yunji went downstairs to pour a glass of water. Sitting on the sofa, Bei Yunj subconsciously glanced at her phone and called Huashidu, but she quickly hung up. At this time the man might be working. However, she did not expect. Bei Yunj was about to get up when her phone suddenly rang. After picking up the call, it was the man's deep and pleasant voice. There was a magnetic smile in his voice as if he could calm her down. What's wrong? Can't Yun sleep? Bei Yunj licked her red lips. I called the wrong number just now. I can't sleep. There was a low chuckle in the man's voice. It was hopelessly sexy. In the quiet night, everything seemed gentle and explicit. You even bought a gift for Yun. What? Bei Yunj asked instinctively. Unexpectedly, a video call suddenly popped up on her phone. After the call was connected, Bei Yunj looked at the dim light on the screen. The man's well-defined hand suddenly took out a red headband from the side. For some reason she had a bad feeling. As expected. When Bei Yunj saw it clearly, she realized that it was a pair of elk antlers. Bei Yunj was speechless. What special fetish did this man have? Huashidu glanced at Bei Yunj. The corners of his peach blossom eyes curled up, looking seductive and light. He said naturally, brother likes little bunnies too. Bei Yunj looked up and saw the man's slender and clean hand playing with another white cat ear that had appeared out of nowhere. This scene was inexplicably ambiguous and seductive. It made people blush and their hearts beat faster. However, the man was quite regretful. It's a pity that Zheng Su couldn't buy it after going to 3 stores. Bei Yunj's hua. Did Zheng Su have any self-awareness as a personal assistant? Bei Yunj rejected him expressionlessly. Doesn't Yun like furry things? Of course. The man said this without blushing at all. Bei Yunj, if this thing appeared in someone else's hands she would find it cute. However, this D*MN man's gaze was obviously wrong. I'm going to sleep. Bei Yunj hung up the phone, afraid that Huashidu would say something else. The man looked at the young lady on the other end of the video call. Her face was tense, but her ears were red. He could not help but smile. But soon, Huashidu casually threw the white cat ear in his hand on the table. Go and call Zhong Xinglin and ask when the test for the medicine will be over. P.S. Not long after I got home I'll continue to update. End of chapter. Chapter 1024. At night. After being disturbed by Huashidu's thoughts, she inexplicably slept much better. The next day at the Computing Institute, Bei Yunj sent a message to the man. When is brother coming back? Very quickly there was a reply. Yun misses me that much? Bei Yunj, she could almost imagine Huashidu's tone when he said this to her. What are you looking at, Master Pei? Si Qingyin couldn't help asking. Bei Yunj glanced at Huashidu and instinctively put her phone back into her pocket. Nothing. Si Qingyin held the thermos flask with one hand and almost thought that he was seeing Bei Yunj in a relationship. However, Bei Yunj's eyes were indeed not so red today. Bei Yunj, she didn't know whether to say that this medicine was effective or that Huashidu was effective. Si Qingyin suddenly remembered. You just went to get a drip yesterday. Why are you still here today? Did you take medicine yesterday? Si Qingyin asked. Bei Yunj replied, yes. Si Qingyin nodded thoughtfully. The effect is quite good. Back home. Bei Yunj was chatting with Auntie Meow downstairs when she suddenly received a message from the man. Sleep in brother's bedroom today. There's nothing much at home. Seeing that Bei Yunj was in a better state than yesterday, Si Qingyin did not say much and only reminded her to rest well. At 5 in the afternoon, Bei Yunj was chased out of the institute and asked to rest early. Bei Yunj, couldn't he do something that a human should do? Miss Assistant Tseng came over just now, Auntie Meow said. Bei Yunj had yet to send a message to ask. Then she saw another new message. This way you can dream of brother. Bei Yunj had just gone upstairs when she knew what Zheng Su had done. He had cut off the power in her room. Bei Yunj asked without looking up, is he here to get the documents? Not really. He just stood by our power supply box for a long time. I don't know what he's doing. At night. But after class, Jasmine and Ticha's minds were in a mess. Did they just see a man's suit behind the teacher's back? Teacher Pei was cohabiting with someone? It was hard to guess who was behind this. Not long after, Bei Yunj went to the man's bedroom to borrow electricity and taught Jasmine and Tich for 2 hours. After he was done, he prepared to take a shower and sleep. She unconsciously frowned and opened her eyes, but she didn't see anyone in the bedroom. Outside the window, everything was quiet and the night light was like fireflies. Yun? Bei Yunj, who knew nothing, changed into her pajamas and went to bed. There was a faint fragrance on the bed, which made people feel at ease as usual. In the middle of the night, Bei Yunj felt a little cold on her forehead and subconsciously reached out to take it. Only then did she realize that it was a cooling patch. She didn't know when the man had appeared in front of her. His usually lazy peach blossom eyes were now staring straight at her. Washidu was about to reach out and tidy up the cooling stickers that Bei Yunj had crooked. However, Bei Yunj suddenly grabbed his hand. The man's deep and familiar voice fell into her ears. She looked up. The man lowered his head in surprise, not wanting to meet the girl's direct gaze. This child had a fever and was confused, but she had become much bolder. Washidu curled his lips and patiently allowed her to hold his hand. His other hand slowly tidied up her cooling stickers. You can't even take care of yourself after being away for 2 weeks? Washidu had just finished speaking when Bei Yunj suddenly called out, "Brother?" Chapter 1025. The man sat by the bed. Not long after he got off the plane, he rushed home. At first, he thought that the little girl could not sleep because he was not around. But he did not expect her to be sick. "Are you feeling unwell?" Washidu sent a message to the private doctor and allowed the little girl to hold his hand. He said, "After sweating, you won't feel uncomfortable anymore." However, Washidu did not know that Bei Yunj did not hear a single word he said. At this moment, Bei Yunj looked at him for a long time before saying, "Come here." Washidu raised his eyebrows and looked at the little girl on the bed. There was a hint of playfulness in his nonchalant eyes. He put down his phone and listened to her. He sat closer. However, the little girl lying on the bed was still staring at him with dissatisfaction in her eyes. The man bent down with interest. His low and hoarse laughter was seductive. "Are you confused because you're sick, Yunyun?" Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. Then, before the man could react, Bei Yunj suddenly reached out and wrapped her slender and fair arms around the man's neck. Washidu was hooked by this sudden hug and leaned over instinctively. However, he quickly supported himself with one hand on the edge of the bed. He was afraid that he would hurt the culprit. "Yunyun." The man's voice was low and hoarse and his sexy Adam's apple bobbed. But then Bei Yunj, who had her hands around Washidu's neck, gradually looked down. She stared at the mole on the man's Adam's apple. Suddenly, the man had yet to speak. Bei Yunj suddenly leaned closer, hooked her arms around the man's neck, and kissed the mole on his Adam's apple. The man also felt a soft and warm layer on his Adam's apple. His body froze, and an unknown evil fire suddenly rose in his lower abdomen. "Do I have to take the initiative even in my dreams, brother?" Bei Yunj did not notice the darkness in the man's eyes. Her beautiful eyes curved lazily, and she felt that she had completed a major event in her life. She finally kissed the mole on Washidu's Adam's apple. Although it was a dream, Washidu was so angry that he laughed. In a dream? Bei Yunj, who was originally a little dizzy, saw Washidu's dangerous gaze clearly. This dream was a little realistic. "What else do you want?" The lazy and noble man suddenly laughed and asked her while raising the temperature in the room. "Tell me about it." Before Bei Yunj could regain her senses, she saw Washidu throw the remote control away and suddenly take off his coat and suit jacket. Bei Yunj? She didn't think about that. Bei Yunj watched as the man pulled off his tie with one hand and silently pulled the blanket up. "I still want to sleep." Not long after, Bei Yunj was scooped up and leaned against the cushion behind her. They looked up and met each other's eyes. The man's eyes were dark and his magnetic voice was lazy and playful as he asked, "Isn't it too much of a loss for you to only kiss me once in your dream, Yunyun?" Bei Yunj's gaze fell on the place she had just kissed. Because it was her first time doing it, the kiss ended very quickly. Bei Yunj's heart started to itch again. However, when Bei Yunj looked up at Washidu again, she quickly dismissed this thought. The man in front of her had a dark gaze. It was dangerous and aggressive, as if he could swallow her at any time. She didn't know why. Bei Yunj's mind was in a mess, but she had a premonition. If she really dared to act recklessly, this person would really punish her on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 1026. Bei Yunj, wasn't this dream too dangerous? Brother, Just as Bei Yunj's thoughts were running wild, she suddenly seemed to hear movement at the door. Bei Yunj subconsciously looked at the door. Seeing that the young lady dared to be distracted in front of him, the man who had always been casual licked his itchy teeth. The next moment, Bei Yunj had just turned around when she was suddenly pressed against the cushion. She was surrounded by the man's strong aggressive aura. She looked up and met the man's explicit and burning gaze. This dream was too wild. It was precisely because of this that Bei Yunj did not suspect that this was not a dream. Normally, with the man's usual style, it was impossible for him to do these things to her. Suddenly, Bei Yunj sucked in a breath of cold air. The man bit her neck with a moderate amount of force. It was numb but not painful. However, the atmosphere was so ambiguous that it made her cheeks burn. Don't. Bei Yunj was about to push him away and subconsciously avoided the man's aggressive aggression. However, in the next moment, the man covered the back of her head with one hand and gently stroked her long black hair. In fact, he did not allow her to retreat. The man easily eased her uneasiness, but he also led this dangerous situation that made her blush and her heart race. Outside the door, it was Jiang Baichuan whom he had met at the private clinic last time. When Huashidu came out again, Jiang Baichuan sized up the man in front of him. He was no different from usual. "Where's your family?" Jiang Baichuan asked. Huashidu lit a cigarette and casually leaned against the door. "Inside." Jiang Baichuan. He remembered that Huashidu's family member was only in high school, right? Huashidu was smoking in front of him. Then, when Jiang Baichuan walked in, the girl was dressed neatly except for an obvious bite mark on her neck. Huashidu also had times when he was not human. Jiang Baichuan looked at Huashidu with a complicated expression. "I asked you to come and see a doctor, not to stand there foolishly." The man's voice sounded indifferently. Jiang Baichuan didn't dare to say much. He just quietly checked Bei Yunj's temperature and asked fearlessly, "Is it really just a fever? No other treatment needs?" There were also people in the circle who would often treat certain injuries caused by excessive indulgence in certain aspects for the lovers of the rich. Next, when Jiang Baichuan met Huashidu's gaze, he immediately shut his mouth. "Get some ointment for your neck," Huashidu said slowly. Jiang Baichuan said subconsciously, "The one on your neck will disappear in 2 or 3 days." Huashidu turned to look at him. "Yes, Master Du." Jiang Baichuan was very polite. "Continent K. What's the situation with Master Du? Where did he go? Why are you here to see me?" The man was wearing a white coat. His features were handsome and elegant, and his temperament was cold. Zhou Yu said, "Dr. Song, Master Du has returned to Country A these few days, but he will be here soon." Song Su laughed. "Since when is there someone in Country A who can make Master Du so happy that he forgets about home?" Zhou Yu was silent for a moment. "Master Du, this time, I brought her to see you." "What? He wants to bring a woman to see Continent K?" Song Su frowned, his tone filled with dissatisfaction. The next day, Bei Yunj woke up and felt that her hand hurt a little. She opened her eyes and saw that it seemed to have been injected with saline last night. After Bei Yunj went downstairs, she saw Huashidu reading the newspaper. "Brother?" A memory suddenly appeared in Bei Yunj's mind. The end of this chapter. Chapter 1027. Last night, she seemed to have had a very unruly dream. Bei Yunj thought of the scene where the man turned the tables and her legs almost went weak. "Let's go downstairs and eat." The man's expression was natural, as if nothing had happened. "Brother, did you come back last night?" Bei Yunj probed. The man sat at the dining table and replied lightly, "Yes." Such a normal reaction made Bei Yunj feel that what happened last night was just a dream. "What's wrong?" Huashidu looked up at her. "Bei Yunj. Then did you greet me last night?" The man's hand that was holding his chopstick stopped and he suddenly smiled. "Yunyun dreamed of me last night?" Bei Yunj. This rhetorical question made Bei Yunj speechless. "Last night I went in to see you." Before Bei Yunj could ask again, the man continued, "You've been running a high fever, so I asked the doctor to give you an 4 drip. Bei Yunj. That's it? Did Yunyun do something to me in the dream? The man's thin red lips curled up as he asked with interest. Bei Yunj. She could not believe that she could be so useless in her dream. After being bitten on the neck by the D*Mn man, she begged for mercy. What was even more unexpected was that the Huashidu in her dream could be so terrible and do things that made her blush. Union, a person's dream reflects their personal preferences to a certain extent. However, the man still smiled slowly. Bei Yunj. I'm hungry. After breakfast, Bei Yunj went upstairs and looked at herself in the mirror doubtfully. In the end, there was no mark on the back of her neck. Bei Yunj pondered and slowly went downstairs. Suddenly, Miss Pei, let me take your temperature. Bei Yunj looked up and saw Jiang Baichuan. She nodded and replied, "Okay, thank you." Jiang Baichuan also secretly glanced at Bei Yunj. From time to time she touched the spot where she was bitten last night. He looked rather puzzled. Obviously he didn't know what had happened last night. Jiang Baichuan couldn't help but glance at the elegant man beside him. He was truly a refined scum. This was also the first time Jiang Baichuan realized that this young man could actually lie to a young lady without blushing at all. "Dr. Jiang?" Bei Yunj's voice interrupted Jiang Baichuan's thoughts. "Let's take Miss Pei's temperature first." After regaining his senses, Jiang Baichuan immediately opened the medical box. Until Jiang Baichuan left. Huashidu suddenly said, "Yunyan, I'm going out of the country in 2 days. Do you want to go with me?" Bei Yunj didn't have much to do in the station. He just needed to report to Zhong Xinglin. Sure. Bei Yunj did not look up at Huashidu either. However, when she thought of the dream last night, her ears inexplicably heated up. Why would she have such a dream? The man only curled his lips and didn't say much. The next day, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the computing institute when Zhong Xinglin handed a bottle of new medicine to Bei Yunj. "This bottle has just been tested. For now, this new medicine should be the most compatible with you." Bei Yunj smiled. "Thank you, Elder Zhong." Zhong Xinglin couldn't help but mutter in his heart as he drank water. There was no need to thank him. If it wasn't for the person beside her, who would be able to invite Luoxia to make medicine. Suddenly, "Oh right, I'm going to Continent K the day after tomorrow." Zhong Xinglin choked. "Cough cough, where are you going?" P.S. Dr. Luo's name has been edited. It's easy to get mixed up. End of this chapter. Chapter 1028. Nance had long said that someone in Continent K was targeting Gur. Now, had Gur been discovered? "My brother seems to be doing something in Continent K." Bei Yunj's beautiful eyes curved as she lazily rested her chin on her hand. Zhong Xinglin was silent for a moment before probing, "Mr. Hua?" "Yes." Si Qingyan was speechless. So Huashidu was back. No wonder he was in such a good mood today. "That's good." Zhong Xinglin heaved a sigh of relief. If it was Huashidu, then there would be no danger in going to Continent K. "But Gur, I know some people in Continent K. If you want to visit the school or the laboratory, I only plan to play for a few days." Zhong Xinglin's smile froze. "All right then." It was harder than ascending to the heavens for his Gur to open up more interpersonal relationships. That day, Huashidu took a private plane to Continent K. After arriving at Continent K, Tseng Su brought Bei Yunj back to Huashidu's private manor. Huashidu went to settle some matters. The population density of Continent K was much lower than that of Yunqing, but the buildings they encountered on the way showed the prosperity of this continent. Continent K is more special, and the difference in regional jurisdiction is also huge. This area is usually crowded at night, and there is no domestic security. Tseng Su reminded her. In Tseng Su's opinion, a pampered young lady like Bei Yunj was indeed not suitable to come to a place like Continent K. "You must bring bodyguards with you when you go out." Tseng Su could not help but remind her again. "Got it?" Bei Yunj replied lazily. Private manor. Bei Yunj had just gone upstairs. After looking at her room, she was about to go downstairs for some tea. However, she did not expect to hear someone talking about her. What kind of bewitching potion has Huashidu been drugged with? Is a woman worth his attention? He really brought her to the manor? Bei Yunj pondered. The woman that the person downstairs was talking about should be her. Dr. Luo. Tseng Su hurriedly wanted to stop him. However, Luoxia sneered. "I want to see what kind of fairy he has with him." After saying this, Luoxia hadn't walked up yet when he suddenly looked up and saw the lazy girl upstairs. Black hair, red dress, snow-white skin, a slender waist and beautiful eyes that made people not dare to look straight at her. She didn't look like a celestial immortal. Instead, she looked more like a demoness who could bring disaster to countries and people. "Are you the woman beside Huashidu?" Luoxia regained his senses and asked in an unfriendly tone. Tseng Su had already figured out Bei Yunj's temper. He didn't dare to watch what was about to happen. As expected, Bei Yunj glanced at him and went downstairs. "Assistant Tseng, I'm going to take a nap later." His meaning was obvious. He wanted Tseng Su to get him out of here. Luoxia's handsome face was about to change in anger. Wasn't the woman beside Huashidu too arrogant? However, when Tseng Su heard that, he really turned to look at him and said sincerely, Dr. Luo, Master Du will probably be back at night. Why don't you go back first? Miss Pei does have the habit of taking afternoon naps. Luo Xie's expression was about to collapse. He didn't expect even Zheng Su to listen to her so much. She's taking an afternoon nap. Can't I sit here? Luo Xie gave a fake smile. Zheng Su was serious. Miss Pei was sick 2 days ago and needs to rest. What illness? Fever. Luo Xie had studied medicine for so many years, but this was the first time he knew that she needed to rest to reduce a fever. End of chapter. Chapter 1029. Bei Yunj went downstairs to get a plate of fruits. Before she went upstairs, she asked Zheng Su to help her bring the laptop upstairs. Luo Xie looked at this situation. It was obvious that Zheng Su had already treated Bei Yunj as Huashidu's subordinate. Therefore, when Huashidu was not around, Zheng Su only listened to Bei Yunj. Zheng Su had just sent Bei Yunj's precious laptop upstairs. When he went downstairs, he was stopped by Luo Xie. Assistant Zheng, what is she studying? Luo Xie guessed that Bei Yunj should also be a university student. Oh, my Miss Pei is still a third-year high school student. She just took a leave of absence. Zheng Su smiled nonchalantly. Luo Xie could not believe it. She's still a high school student? Zheng Su immediately explained, afraid that Luo Xie would misunderstand Huashidu. Miss Pei is already an adult. She just repeated a grade previously. She still dares to take a leave of absence after repeating a grade? Luo Xie sneered, his eyes full of disdain. He had already treated Bei Yunj as a scheming woman who wanted to cling onto Huashidu. Don't you think that this woman is very scheming? Luo Xie still wanted to remind Zheng Su. However, he did not expect Zheng Su to nod desperately in agreement and anger. I have indeed never seen a woman more terrifying than Miss Pei. It was only because he had secretly reported to Master Du in the district last time. Miss Pei had held a grudge for half a month. Every time she went to the Huo Corporation, she would bring a deck of cards and win all of his year-end bonus. Then do you still think that this woman is compatible with Huashidu? Luo Xie frowned. Zheng Su was stunned. If Master Du thinks they are compatible, then they are. Luo Xie's expression was about to crack. An idea flashed in Zheng Su's mind. He suddenly grabbed Luo Xie's arm sneakily. Dr. Luo, can you do me a favor? My year-end bonus is in Miss Pei's hands. Luo Xie looked at him sideways and gestured for him to continue. Miss Pei said that as long as I finish her homework, she will return it to me. But mathematics is too difficult. I don't dare to blindly do Miss Pei's homework. Can you do me a favor? Although Zheng Su graduated from a famous university, the difficulty of mathematics questions these days were already different from that of his time. When Luo Xie heard this, his face darkened. He immediately called Huashidu. Soon, the man's pleasant voice sounded. What's the matter? Master Du, the high school girl beside you even asked your assistant to do her homework. Luo Xie wanted to tell Huashidu that Bei Yunj was arrogant because she was pampered. But in the next moment, Huashidu asked unhurriedly, has Zheng Su finished writing? Luo Xie, what the hell? Zheng Su's math is not very good. Let Zheng Su leave his math homework to Zhou Yu. Huashidu looked at the documents and said slowly, Hengda is quite strict with the quality of the student's homework. Zhou Yu's body trembled. Has the boss become so crazy? He was a high-end talent with a double major in mathematics and finance from Nili University, yet he still had to do high school homework. At this moment, the most unbelievable one was Luo Xie. Huashidu was clearly a person who was self-abiding, polite, and indifferent. It was almost impossible to see him favoring anyone. But now, Huashidu had completely lost his bottom line for a woman. Master Du, are you serious? Luo Xie could not help but ask. In 2 days she will be doing a checkup in your studio. I hope you can do your best and not make any mistakes. Chapter 1030. Me? Before Luo Xie could say anything, the other party hung up. Not long after, Luo Xie left with a dark expression. Back in the laboratory. A little fatty smiled and said, Boss, you're back. Did you see the forum? I'm not free. Luo Xie's expression was ugly. The little fatty knew that his boss was not satisfied with the woman beside Master Du this time. His boss came back with a dark expression. Something must have happened. He leaned forward sneakily. Boss, the forum said that the Computing Institute won the International Computing Competition. The Computing Institute. Luocia's face darkened even more and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. Jin Kai, this is the first time I've realized that you're not afraid of death. The little fatty trembled and immediately explained, No, boss, listen to me. All the semi-finals will be included in this international competition. The little fatty hinted crazily. Also, only members under the age of 35 are allowed to participate in the competition. Other than Si Qingyan, who else is under the age of 35 in the Computing Institute? You know. Luoxia was stunned. You're talking about? That's right. Boss, haven't you liked her for a long time? The little fatty continued to smile obsequiously. How is it, boss? Are you happy? Where is the semi-finals? Luoxia took a deep breath. The gloominess from before had completely disappeared. What could make a withered tree come back to life more than the power of an idol? I heard that it's either Continent K or Country J, the little fatty said. However, rumor has it that although she's quite young, some people say that she's already 35. The little fatty wanted to say something but hesitated. Boss, you're only 27. Do I need you to teach me what kind of woman I like? Luoxia looked at him coldly. The little fatty was speechless. After all, Luoxia was the target of countless female researchers in the industry. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly liked that person who had never shown her face. He even had to say that he had a very special feeling for her. But who in the industry didn't feel that she was special? This was a super genius who had appeared out of nowhere and won 2 major awards in the world. However, everyone knew that she was an idol. She could only be seen from afar and not blasphemed. Only Luoxia kept thinking that he could become a successful man behind the scenes. Little Fatty's mood was complicated. Boss, actually, I think you're just... Luoxia suddenly interrupted. You stay in the lab. I'm going out to buy some suits. Little Fatty, hopefully she wasn't pregnant and wasn't ugly. Otherwise he would be letting down his boss's yearning for love. The next day. In the bedroom, the person who was too lazy to move asked while biting a cherry lazily. Little Greg, when can you feed me cherries? The laptop on the bed that was forced to chat with him automatically turned black. The Gemini system, which had yet to be installed into the robot's body, had learned one of the greatest human skills in the past few days, playing dead. Although it was shameful, it was very useful. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Miss Pei? It was Tseng Su's voice. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and went to open the door. What's wrong? Dr. Luo said that there will be a lecture by a famous computer professor in the K-Continent Academy. You should go and take a look. Tseng Su remembered that Bei Yunj was very interested in this aspect. There were talents everywhere in the K-Continent Academy. If Miss Pei could make a few friends during this trip, she would definitely benefit. End of chapter. Chapter 1031. Bei Yunj did not say a word. She only smiled politely at Tseng Su and prepared to close the door. Wait. Tseng Su immediately blocked the door. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows, but there was no smile in her eyes. Is there anything else? Tseng Su's scalp went numb for some reason and he said pitifully, Miss Pei, since you've come to Continent K, you should at least walk around. What if Master Du thinks that I'm deliberately not letting you out? Tseng Su was originally worried that Bei Yunj would be unsafe if she wandered around. However, he did not expect Bei Yunj to be so homebody. Continent K Academy. Bei Yunj chewed on a candy and sat in the back seat without saying a word. Her aura was filled with impatience. Miss Pei, we're here. Tseng Su was excited. Actually, Tseng Su had never been to Continent K Academy, but he knew that it was a top academy. Although it did not participate in the international rankings, its reputation was still not inferior to Neely University. Tseng Su had wanted to go to K University in the past, but unfortunately, K University was very strict with its students. Miss Pei, aren't you excited? This is a top academy. Tseng Su chattered along the way. Bei Yunj answered perfunctorily. However, she did not expect someone to suddenly call her on the way. Miss Pei? Bei Yunj turned around and recognized Luoxia. Dr. Luo, long time no see. Bei Yunj glanced at him and left after politely brushing him off. Tseng Su was stunned by this scene. Miss Pei really didn't play by the rules as usual. She was so cold and perfunctory that no one could find fault with her. Luoxia's face darkened as he blocked Bei Yunj. Miss Pei's way of greeting is really special. Where are you going? Tseng Su immediately said, I'm taking Miss Pei to a computer lecture. Computer lecture? Suddenly a female voice sounded. It was the woman standing beside Luoxia. That should be my lecture, right? Lai Yunqing smiled. Lai Yunqing was 28 years old, the youngest associate professor in Continent K, and also the deputy director of the 10,000 Computing Institute. Are you Professor Lai? Sung Su was also very surprised that Lai Yunqing would be so young and beautiful. He was a bit incoherent. You are really young and beautiful and also very powerful. Bei Yunj glanced at Sung Su and knew that she wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. Lai Yunqing glanced at Bei Yunj and smiled gracefully. It seems that this gentleman is more interested in my studies than this lady. Our miss is still young, so we're just bringing her here for a tour. Sung Su nodded his head like he was pecking at rice. He looked at Lai Yunqing as if he was looking at his idol. Lai Yunqing raised her eyebrows and said thoughtfully, "Yes, but I've already finished college when I was 20. Sung Su didn't notice anything wrong and just chatted with Lai Yunqing. Luoxia looked at Bei Yunj and suddenly asked, "Since Miss Pei is interested in computers, why don't you sit in on the class at K Continent Academy?" Sung Su looked like a parent from Bei Yunj. His eyes lit up as he asked excitedly, "Really?" Bei Yunj was speechless. This. Lai Yunqing's smile froze. She looked at Luoxia, not understanding what he meant. Luoxia glanced at Lai Yunqing. He didn't intend to tell Lai Yunqing that Bei Yunj was brought here by Huoshidu. In Continent K and Country R, Huoshidu usually only brought Zhouyu with him, so no one recognized Sung Su. Luoxia seemed to have thought of something and chuckled. Consider it as giving me face. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.